You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're just going to get started with, let's just recap the season. Obviously, it was a successful season for PWHL Minnesota, Walter Cup champions. So let's just start, and Alexis, I'll start with you. What were some of the big things that stood out about this PWHL Minnesota inaugural season that just so happened to have a cup win too?
Well, that was the biggest one. I won't even mention that because obviously that was great. But some of, I think, the unexpected good things this season was, well, not unexpected, but the fans. I expected fans to be there, but it was even better than what I thought it was going to be, just because you never know how a state and fan base is going to take in a new team, even though we love hockey here in Minnesota. Anytime there's something new, you never fully know what to expect, but it was amazing to see the fans there every single night, and their first home game, they of course broke the record at the time for fans at a women's hockey game in the state, so that was really cool. It was broken a few more times throughout that season. But I think the other cool thing too was just the way Minnesota battled this season, because despite winning a Walter Cup, there was times where the season was not going well for them, especially at the very end of the season when it mattered the most, and somehow they found a way to get into the playoffs, so they got a little help from some other teams, but they got in and then they made the most of their opportunity, even being down early to the best team in the league in the playoffs. They came back and found a way to make the most of it and win a Walter Cup. So it was a really special season to watch, both as a fan of hockey and as a broadcaster, and I'm really looking forward to season 2.
Mariah, what were some of the things that stood out for you?
I mean, everything Alexis said, it was crazy. Like, I grew up playing hockey, and obviously the pro teams, they kind of came and went, but being able to be in the press box and see it in person, it was amazing knowing that there's kids now that have this to aspire to. And I mean, as a team standpoint, it was just crazy seeing how they acted as a team. It wasn't individual. It was not like in the interviews, it was never, well, I did this, I did this. It was always credit to their teammates. They were always just a joint effort, a family, and they loved being able to see all the fans and just talk to everybody. It wasn't like one-word answers. Sometimes it was a full-on conversation. So it was crazy to see that.
Just looking at there's obviously that losing streak to end the season, and that's not something you ever want when you are trying to get ready for playoffs. You don't want to go into the playoffs on a losing skid. What were some of the ways that Minnesota was able to get back on track and kick it into gear once the playoffs started? Alexis, I'll start with you again.
I still don't have a good answer for this question because I've been asked this a lot. In the playoffs, I was asked a lot, and even in the offseason, people have been like, how the heck did they turn things around? Like I said, they did get help from other teams to make the playoffs. If it was up to them, they would not have been in the playoffs. Ottawa helped them out on the very last day of the season to secure them a playoff spot. So it wasn't fully them that kind of got themselves there at the end of things. Of course, they set themselves up for success early in the season by winning so many games that they could afford to have a losing stretch down the season, or down the end of the season, and still make the playoffs. So you got to give them props for that. But I honestly think that from the interviews we've had with players towards the end of the season and just kind of seeing how things ended up going, I think it was one of those moments where it was like, it can't get much worse, so like, let's just try to get back to what we know best. Sometimes it's almost good to get to that low point, because it's like, well, stop overthinking it and just play the game, because we've won many games this season. We've got a lot of talent. That hasn't changed, so why are we winning? And I think they just found a way to believe in themselves again. And even in that Toronto series, when they went down 2-0, I'll be the first to admit, I didn't expect they would win a game, let alone win that series. So I think they just found a way to continue to dig deep. And then once they got to that next series, it was like, all right, we've gone through the worst, so let's just win the whole thing, right?
We got picked as the team that Toronto just wanted to try to beat. It's like,
and they almost did.
I think we're okay. Mariah, what were some of the things that you noticed as the season was winding down? What did the ladies do to be able to kind of kick that losing streak?
I mean, that had to be the closest way to get into the playoffs I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I was watching that last game, like, what is going on? But, I mean, they didn't get down. A lot of teams, like, I'll use the NHL as an example. It's obviously the PWHL has only had one season, but a lot of times when you see a team get a losing streak, it's always, what are we doing wrong? Like, they just kind of focus on that. Where the ladies, it seemed like they just kept playing their game. They didn't let it affect them mentally. They're just like, well, kind of what you said, what else can we do? So they just kept going, and they got lucky and went all the way with it.
Let's talk a little bit about Toronto, because as we mentioned, and it's one of the things that I enjoy most about the PWHL is hey, I want to pick, we're the best team going into the playoffs, so we get to pick our opponent, because it's just constant mind games. You're either going to pick a team that is the best matchup for you, or you are going to pick the lower seed. How did Minnesota feed off of that? Because obviously, going in that the team that picks you thinks that they can beat. That's the reason that they picked you. So how did Minnesota feed off of that, especially going down early in that series, like to come back and to win it?
I think honestly, well, let me put it this way. We talked to Coach Ken Klee when Minnesota was still battling for one of those top spots before they went on that losing streak. There was a chance they were going to be the first seed heading into the playoffs. They were battling with Montreal. Montreal, with Toronto, and so we had a lot of conversations with Coach Ken Klee about that during games. And he said to us straight up at one point, I really don't want to be the number 1 seed. I don't want to have to make that decision. I don't want to be bulletin board material. I don't want everyone, looking at us in that way of like, all right, they think they can beat us, like, let's show them. And so I think that was not an unusual mindset towards that. I bet a lot of coaches felt that way, and a lot of players felt that way. When that opportunity went away for them and they were going to potentially be the team that got picked, I think you just, like Mariah was saying, with the idea of like, okay, we're just going to play our game.
Yeah.
I think that same mindset applied to the playoffs. It's like, all right, they think they can beat us. And quite frankly, Minnesota didn't play great against Toronto in the regular season. And it was one of the teams they really struggled to beat. And there wasn't many of them this season that Minnesota struggled against, but Toronto was one that kind of had their number this year, even when Minnesota was a better team than Toronto on paper and in the standings. But I think by the time they got to the postseason, it was like, we've already been through a lot. Now they picked us thinking they could beat us. We just got to play. Then you get down 2-0. At that point, any team in any league, in any situations, like, our back's against the wall, we just got to go for it. And I think Toronto ran out of gas at the end of that series. I think you could see in the way they played. I think you could see it on their faces when they would cut the shots on the bench. It was like, this is not the Toronto team that has torn through everybody all season long. So I think Minnesota caught a break there, but also choosing to continue to battle throughout that playoff series allowed them a chance. And 5 games is not a lot when it's all said and done. So you kind of got to make moves fast.
You got to really take care of business in a series like that. Mariah, anything to add to what Alexis said there?
I mean, Minnesota had to know it was coming. Toronto was going to pick them.
Yeah.
So they kind of just were like, well,
We all acted like
we're already
we're like, no, this is what's going to happen.
they're like, we're gonna go. And I mean, obviously losing Spooner was a big thing too.
Yeah.
But the goaltending stepped up and they just kind of rode that and just kept playing.
I know I'm going to start with Mariah for this one because I know you've been doing those report cards of PWHL players. So let's just talk about some of the players that were most important to the run leading up to the Walter Cup. I'm sure there were injuries during the season, injuries during the playoffs. Who are some of those key pieces that helped PWHL Minnesota hoist the cup?
So my answer may be a little cliche. I'm not going to pick just one. I'm going to say all of them because they pretty much all had to step up to make it through that. I mean, their goaltending stepped up huge. Their defense was phenomenal. And I mean, the scoring was a little bit hesitant at first, but then once they found that, they were just able to make everything work as a team, where some of the other teams you saw, they really relied on their stars and it didn't necessarily work out in the end. So I would say the whole team just kind of found a way to step up and just kept their heads down and grinded the whole way through.
I think to Mariah's point too, I mean, even if you look at the box scores of each game, Taylor Heisey didn't have a point until, what was the game, 4 or 5 against Toronto, so other players had to step up. You talked about the goaltending. Goaltending had to be good. Toronto has some of the best scorers in the league. So I think when some of the key players for Minnesota weren't scoring, the players you'd not expected out of as much found a way to step up. Sophie Jakes had a fantastic playoff run. I mean, I was devastated for her when they called off that goal against Boston that almost won them the cup. I mean, it was like, you felt like she just deserved it for the way she had played for Minnesota in the postseason. So a lot of these players, you're like, man, we didn't always talk about them during the regular season. They weren't always the players scoring the game-winning goals in the regular season. But at the end of the day, Minnesota found a way to get contributions from everybody in whatever way that contribution was. They found a way to get it, and I think ultimately that did help them to win it all.
It's been an eventful off-season, to say the least. And I know, obviously, there is a lot that has gone on. And so, there have been plenty of discussions about all of that, whether it be the changes in the front office, the changes in a player personnel standpoint. What does PWHL Minnesota need to do to move forward with all of that having already happened?
You want me to go
Yeah,
first?
I'll let you tackle that one first.
Great, thank you, Mariah. I appreciate that. It's really unfortunate because, they win the Walter Cup. Everybody's feeling great. Minnesota fans are like, this is awesome. first year of the league. Our team is really good. It's been fun. It was an exciting finish. They're looking forward to the draft coming up in a couple of weeks. They're looking forward to the next season. And before we can even get to the draft, they part ways with Natalie Darwitz, which I don't think has ever happened in the history of sports, where a GM of a championship winning team has been let go basically by the organization. So that was confusing and frustrating, and of course the GM plays such a critical role in the draft that a lot of people were like, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to make the picks that we need to make? Can we rely on the other coaching staff and personnel to kind of fill that role? We get through the draft in one piece. There was fans there who were not happy that Natalie Darwitz was not there, which we expected. And I covered the draft in person, so I heard it and I saw it, and it's unfortunate that it had to be that way with how exciting it was to have the draft in Minnesota and to have fans be coming off this high of a championship win to kind of have it dampened by some of the decisions the team made in the following week. So that was really frustrating, and I think a lot of fans were left feeling confused and a little bit like let down, like, okay, they've done us a disservice by doing this. And anybody who knows hockey in Minnesota, you have a lot of respect for Natalie Darwitz and what she's done both on the ice and off the ice.
Hockey royalty.
Exactly, and so it's like, well, how do we get somebody better than that, first of all, and second of all, they kind of did her dirty the way that things ended. So it's been a frustrating off season, and I'm really curious to see how things start for the next season. I really hope fans don't turn away from this team, but I do understand the frustration, and if fans say, you know what, I don't appreciate the way that was handled, I need to kind of take a break from this, or they need to earn my trust back, I understand that. So I'm curious to see what the buzz is about the team when the season starts.
Yeah, that would be my biggest worry as somebody, if I covered, and we will have more coverage of PWHL Minnesota throughout the season. That would be my biggest worry, is what sort of an impact is this going to have going into next season, because you want to be able to celebrate this. You want to be able to, first home game, celebrate the fact that you won the inaugural Walter Cup, and there's just been a lot of stuff that's happened.
Well, and I saw fans on social media, and listen, I try not to read comments because I've been in this business long enough to know it's better for everybody if you don't, but every now and then I get curious, and I was reading some comments about, Natalie Darwitz being let go and some of the decisions made at the draft by the team, and I saw a lot of fans saying, I'm picking a new team. I don't want to root for this team. I don't want to go to games. I don't want to give them my money. Now, how serious is that? I've made a lot of empty threats in my life as well, so I don't know if people are going to actually follow through with it. But we'll see. I'm sure there's a large percentage of people who said that and are serious. They are going to pick a different team, or they're just going to pick a different sport or league to root for instead, to spend their money on. But there's probably a percentage as well that are maybe going to rethink that and say, I'll give them another shot. Maybe not now, but at some point. But either way, it's unfortunate, especially because you have this whole off season for this to sit and dwell. There's no games being played, nothing going on. Sure, there's signings happening and stuff like that, but it's just kind of ruminating, and it's unfortunate that it happened when it did, and now it's like, all right, you got to work extra hard to earn the trust back of your fan base.
If I had $1 for every time I had said, the Minnesota
I'm done with this team, yeah.
You're not going to hurt me anymore. I would have a minority ownership stake in the Minnesota Wild. Mariah, what do you think about, what does PWHL Minnesota need to do to move past, all this that's happened in the offseason? And Alexis is right. It all happened right away.
Yeah,
right after the season was done.
I can, obviously as somebody who was covering the team and a fan, it was just like, wow, we actually did this. We made everything, we got the cup. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, wait, is this for real? And then everything it felt like came crashing down, and it's like, I was with the fans. I was confused. I didn't even know how to feel. I'm like, okay, this kind of takes away from, the celebration, and you don't want to do that to the team, but at the same time, it's just, you're so lost about it. But, as far as moving forward, the team's just got to be the team they were before this.
Yeah.
And make the, that's the word I was trying to think of, but try to be out in the community, make the connections again, just try to show that you are better than kind of what happened, and that you want to, like Alexis said, earn the trust back, be inclusive, all of that stuff, make it so that the fans want to come back.
Let's talk a little bit about the draft. Obviously, Alexis, you had a chance to cover it in person, and that garnered some reaction too from PWHL Minnesota fans. So let's just look at the players that they brought in, and what were some of the big takeaways from the PWHL draft?
Well, I didn't know what to expect because, again, it was the first draft for the PWHL after a whole season had been played, right? So it's kind of like we now know what each team needs, we know what each team has, and we could start to project what teams might be looking for, what kind of gaps to fill. I think it's especially unique when a team wins a championship and then it's like, okay, what are they going to do in the draft? Do you feel like they have everything they need because they just won? But of course, every team still has holes they're looking to fill and areas they want to add a little bit more depth. And I felt Minnesota was in a good spot heading into the draft, and overall I liked what Minnesota did, but honestly there wasn't too many criticisms I had of any of the teams. I thought the teams for the most part did a good job of filling the gaps that they needed to fill. There wasn't too many choices that were made where I was scratching my head like, I don't know how that's going to help that team, or I would have gone with somebody else there. But for the most part, I feel like the draft board fell like we were projecting. Unfortunately, in women's hockey, we're still at a point where there's not a ton of research and stats and footage and clips of players at the college and high school level and all that stuff. It's much easier to make projections for the men's game just because there's so much more out there. So as somebody who covered the draft, I will admit publicly it was the hardest thing I ever did. I mean, it was difficult. But we got through it and it was a ton of fun, and it was fun to see new players find their homes. And I think honestly my biggest takeaway from the draft, aside from which teams pick which players and what they might do this season in their new roles, is I just love seeing the players be excited to kind of have a future to look forward to, because we've never really seen this before, at least in this capacity. Of course, there was former leagues, there was the PHF, there was the NWHL, but this year, and I'm sure Mariah, you can attest to it, just felt different in a really good way. And so it was just cool to see the emotion of the players, and that to me was the best part of the night, is like these players have a career to look forward to after college, after playing overseas, after high school, and seeing some of those dreams come true that night for me was the best part.
And I got to kind of have a fashion show.
Yeah, that was really cool. I liked that. The purple carpet.
Mariah, what did you think of of what PWHL Minnesota did in the draft?
Well, I got to be there too, and it was just like, whoa, okay, this is a whole different, like, I've been to games, but obviously the draft is a whole new experience, and I didn't know what to expect, and I walked in, I'm like, okay, this is...
It was legit.
It was like, wow, and like seeing all the players just be excited and knowing what teams they're going to be with, and I mean, for Minnesota, personally, I was excited to see Claire Thompson.
Yes, that was one of my favorite picks.
I'll be honest, I didn't really know a lot of the women's players at the time, because like you said, there's not a lot to go off over. The NHL, it's like they've got years upon years.
They have their birth weight, they have their social security number, everything.
But like I did after the draft, I did a little research for the article I wrote up, and I was like, man, I really like this pick, and she seems like she'll be a great addition to the defense. I mean, all of their picks seem like they were solid to playing wise. Yeah. So I'm just like, I'm excited to see where this team goes, and hopefully they can just build off of what they already had.
One of the questions that we've gotten on the stream is actually one that I had queued up next, so this works perfect. I love when things work out like that. From what you were saying earlier, Alexis, and I think the last time I had you on the show, it sounds like team names are going to be done.
Yes, glad you asked. So, at the end of last season, I don't know what you heard or were told, but I was told it was going to happen sometime in August. Yeah, okay, so that was the last I heard, but also we were told a lot of things at the end of last season of here's when we're going to do this and here's when we're going to do that.
I was like, I'll wait and see.
Yeah, I was like, well, let me know when it happens. So I was told August. I wasn't given an exact date or kind of how they were going to do it, but just that it would be happening in August. I did have a call with my bosses for the broadcast side of things about 2 weeks ago, just kind of, getting ready for the next season, getting things organized and figuring out what was the timeline of how things were going to happen. And I was told it was going to be September now. They gave me a date, but I can't remember. Is it like the 9th or 10th or something like that? Yeah.
I can't remember.
So beginning of September, I don't know how they're revealing, and I have no idea which names anybody's picking. That's the only thing I know is it's happening now in September. But it's just going to be exciting to finally put some names and logos and color schemes and all this stuff, put it all together for these teams, because I know that was one of the most frequently asked questions I got last year was like, why don't they have names? What are they going to be? So it'll just be nice to finally have that done.
Yeah, because it just doesn't roll off the tongue, PWHL Minnesota.
Okay, I mean, I'm going to complain for a second, but as a broadcaster, there's nothing more frustrating than, every time you cover a game, you've got logos, you've got team names, so it's just natural to say the blank, the Wild, the Stars, the Blues, okay? So how many times this season was I talking and I go, the team in purple, the Minnesota team. Like, I just would get stuck and I'm like, I sound like an idiot, but like, I don't know, like, my brain is just trained to say the fill in the blank, and I got stuck so many times this season.
Articles are the same.
Yeah, you're like,
it's the team name, and it's just like, I don't have a nickname. I finally had to go to my boss and be like, can I just say like Minnesota, or do I have to put PWHL every time? Like, you can just do Minnesota.
I don't know how I didn't think of that previously, but I think literally like yesterday or the day before, I just in my head was like, you can just call them Minnesota.
Okay, so at the beginning of the season, I don't know if we were like told to do this or if we just kind of all naturally started doing it, but we would all say like, all right, coming up on today's broadcast, it's going to be PWHL Minnesota versus PWHL Toronto. And after a while, the league was like, you guys can just say Minnesota and Toronto. Like, you don't have to say the whole thing. Yeah, I was like, oh, thank God.
I know, Mariah, you've been doing, as I mentioned, the report cards. And I encourage anybody who hasn't had a chance to read those yet to just take a peek at them. Who have been some of the players that have received the highest grades so far in recapping the season?
I'm to like the bottom half of the forwards. It's been a little slower because they have a longer off season. So I was just like, I gotta take my time with these.
It's a good call.
Most of them I've gotten, they won the whole thing, so most of them I can't complain too much about.
Yeah.
There's a few that are maybe on the lower side because they either didn't play as much or didn't contribute as much. But the couple that have stood out were like you said, Sophie Jakes. She was phenomenal, and I couldn't believe how she stepped up in the playoffs. I was just like, who's buzzing around? And all of a sudden I see her name, and I'm like, oh,
of course,
okay.
It's Sophie, yeah. After a while, you're just like, it's got to be Sophie now. At this point, we've said her name so many times.
And then, of course, like Lee Steckline. Obviously, Heisey and Coyne Schofield and all those players have stood out. I just haven't gotten to them quite yet. But, it's really hard to criticize a team that went from where they were in the season to, like, crashing and burning to going back up and winning the whole thing. So I really don't have a lot of complaints.
They really got the full Valley Fair experience, like, all the way down the hill, back up, twists, turns. One question from Dan on the stream, and I'll ask this for both of you. Which new face to PWHL Minnesota should fans be most excited about for this upcoming season, which starts in November, right?
Yes. End of November is what they're shooting for. They're still finalizing the schedule again. As of a couple weeks ago when I talked to my boss, they were still finalizing things. But end of November, they are going to get things rolling. I think Claire Thompson. Like we talked about. Before they picked her, because I believe she was picked a little later in the draft by Minnesota, one of the last handful of picks that they had. And at that point, it's like we're running out of things to talk about. A lot of these players at this point we don't have as much information on. But for some reason, her name kept standing out, and I kept thinking in my head, I'm like, if they pick her, I feel like this would be a really decent pick because Minnesota's got a lot of firepower on the front side of things. They've got some really good defensive pieces as well, but I feel like they could use a little bit more depth defensively. And so they ended up picking her, and I was like, okay, this is awesome. I'm really excited to see what she's going to be able to do. So I don't know, something about her just intrigues me, and I feel like she's going to be a good fit with Minnesota's defensive side of things.
Same. When I was looking over some of the comments people were making about her, they brought up her size. And I'm like, with how I don't know what you, but I was surprised with how physical the league was at first.
It was, yeah.
I was excited.
Yes.
So it was like, wow, this wasn't like, I grew up playing.
But they're taking no prisoners out there, yeah.
It was just like, okay, this is good for new fans. Because, the complaints I would get about women's hockey was, well, it's boring. It's not as there's not as much entertaining things. I'm like, well, you should watch it.
Yeah.
But adding that physical side and having her size as a defenseman, that's going to be insane to see.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that stood out to me when I first tuned in, like way at the beginning of the season. I don't remember which game it was, but there was one of the opponents and a player for PWHL Minnesota absolutely like leveled. Like we're talking like full flip.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I'm in. Tell me what I need to do to just continue to watch this because this was good.
Yeah. It was a ton of fun. I have personally always, and I didn't play the sport, so you might have a different perspective than I did. No way. I would have been terrible if I would have played like every other sport I played. But I have always advocated for checking in women's hockey. I think if you teach it the right way, there's a safe way to do it, there's a wrong way to do it. The boys learn how to do it safely. You learn it when you're a kid, and you know there's guidelines in the NHL, there's guidelines in college hockey, so it's not a free for all out there by any means. And I think if you teach the young girls how to check and how to do it safely and have the rules in place of okay, this is a penalty, this is where the line is, and this is okay and this isn't. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be allowed at every level. And so I've always advocated for it, and I do think it adds a totally new element to the game that makes it so exciting. It's one of the things I love about hockey in general is the physicality and just kind of the grit required to play the game well. And so I loved that the PWHL implemented it, and I know the players loved it and the fans loved it as well. So it's been really cool just to see how much everybody's embraced that element to the game. And I really think it's a big reason a lot of fans have loved it like they did. I've had a lot of people be like, that's my favorite thing about the league. I love that they can check, and so it's been really cool.
And seeing Coyne Schofield with her size,
She is just
do not mess with her. She was a wrecking ball, and I'm like, oh my god, who keeps hitting people? And I look at like, okay, I'm like, it's the smallest player on the team.
Yeah, she plays a physical, gritty, angry game. I really appreciate her.
Just one final one on PWHL, and then we'll switch gears to the Minnesota Wild. What are the expectations for this year for PWHL Minnesota? Or is it too early to tell? Are we expecting this to be a team that is in postseason contention again? Second straight Walter Cup? What do we think?
I'll let you go first.
I mean, after the last season with the roller coaster, how can you not expect them to fight for it again?
It's a Minnesota team.
I mean,
there's gonna be ups and downs.
And it's like, even if they hit bottom again, it's like, well, they'll come back. I'll just go for it again.
Not our first rodeo. Yeah, I think, they didn't add any new teams this year. I know they wanted to focus on a lot of other things instead of adding more chaos to the situation. They wanted to tighten up some things they already were in the process of working on, like getting names, getting logos, kind of figuring out which rules they liked and what they didn't, because they kind of said all season long, this is fluid, right? We're going to change what we don't like, and we'll keep what everybody does like. But I think that it's going to be very competitive again, like it was this last season. For the most part, almost every team was competitive, aside from really New York, but even at the end of the season, if there was 10 more games in the season, they would have been a playoff team. So I think there's going to be a lot of parity again this season. Like I said, in regards to the draft, I liked a lot of what everybody did in the draft. I think a lot of teams got some really, really key pieces they needed. So I'm excited to see what happens. I don't see why not in regards to Minnesota making another run, and there will be more games this season, so we'll get a little bit more of a sample size of what are these teams capable of. It'll be a little bit more of a grind. We'll see how that wears down on the players as well, but I think it's going to be another fun season.
One other final thing before we move on to the Wild, is you both cover PWHL Minnesota for various outlets. Let's just shout those out for the listeners so they know where they can see or read your work when the season gets rolling.
Yeah, so we broadcast on Valley Sports North. You can watch all the games are on there, even though we only cover the home teams. You can watch the away games as well, are streamed through there, so you can tune in there. Each team has kind of their local broadcast that they work with, but you can watch on there and YouTube as well.
So I cover my writing, and it's a website called The Hockey Writers. So.
Excellent. Well, let's talk a little Minnesota Wild here because.
Excuse me.
Getting some hardware. Let's talk a little Wild here because the Wild season preseason starts in less than a month. I can't believe it. I also can believe it, but I can't. We're already at that point. But just what are both of your expectations for what we will see from the Minnesota Wild this season?
Okay. I don't know how to feel about the team right now. Last year was, I've been a diehard Wild fan my entire life. I've shed more tears over this team than any other thing in my life ever. I mean, I've loved this team since it existed. So even though I work for the team, I'm one of those people who like is at work angry when things aren't going well. I'm just miserable and like this team frustrates me. I want to cry. I'm angry. So I mean, I live and die by my emotions with that team. And last year, I was almost numb to the team after a while because it was such a and I've never in my life, I had many conversations with my dad about this. I was like, I have never in my life felt this way. I am normally like in tears over it. I'm like, what is going wrong? I wake up, I'm trying to game plan, I go to bed, I'm running through everything in my mind. And this season, it was just like after a while, I'm like, I almost feel like I don't care. Like I'm not gonna let them hurt me like this year. So it was a very strange season as a fan, for sure, and I know a lot of other people probably felt the same way. But despite that, there was a lot to be excited about. And towards the end of the season, even though things didn't go the way you would hope things go for a team you're rooting for, there was a lot to be positive about. So I am excited to see how things go this year, and I think the thing that is most exciting to me is seeing what the young guys do. We saw it at the end of last season. It was at times the only bright spot for the team down that stretch of the regular season, and I'm also excited to see Hines in his role as coach for a full season. Off season, preseason, and granted it felt like it was a whole season last year with how early Dean was let go, but I'm excited to see how things go with him at the helm for an entire year.
Yeah, I mean, I remember last season when they let Houston go, I was in a hospital room watching the TV, and all of a sudden I looked at my dad and I'm like, look at the TV. I'm just like, what is going on? And then, I mean, John Hines, I really liked how he took over, and they just, I mean, I've talked about with a few people, and they're like, well, as soon as the new coach joins, it's like the team gets kind of a jump start, like, okay, the coach went, who's next if we don't get things going? So, I mean, the win streak was really cool. But, I mean, as far as expectations, all I can really say is better play than last season. I mean, that's really all I've got. I mean, they need more of everything. And like you said, the young guys, I'm really excited to see them. And, I mean, there were some good things, like obviously seeing Kaprizov come back from, what did he have, 1 or 2 injuries for his last
couple
year?
different,
Yeah.
couple 3, couple 4.
And still seeing him reach as high as he did at points. And, I mean, they've got a lot of good players, so things should hopefully start to turn in another direction.
Yeah, I'm glad you said being just kind of numb to it, Alexis, because it was so weird being up in the press box for all the games and just. You come in and like you're
already mad before the game even starts. That's how it felt every day last year.
100%. Like you come in and me in the press box, I run into Jesse and we're like, so who's gonna get torched today? It just was 20 games in. I just threw my hands up, and I think it was that game against Dallas, that 8-3, where they gave up like 90 billion.
And that was on my parents' anniversary, so I will never forget that game. They were at the game. I was like, I'm so sorry that you had to witness this with the rest of us.
I don't usually get like irate during post games, but I remember like slamming my fist down, and I'm like, this is just hideous. And that was 20 games in. It was like there were like 3 different seasons. It was the first 20 games. It was Sweden. And then
it felt like literally, and what's funny is Joe O'Donnell and Tom Reed, who do the play-by-play and color for our radio broadcast, they made that comment a few times towards the end of the year where they're like, it feels like we've lived like 2 or 3 different seasons in one season. Like the fact that they played overseas in this season does not, like, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that happened. Like that felt like a totally different season. Like it was the way they made us all feel. And then at the end of the year, they do what they always do, and it's like, maybe they're going to make the playoffs. Now hold on a minute, wait a second, they're winning some games, but they just couldn't beat any of the teams they needed to. And at that point, I was like, okay, even if they make the playoffs, do I want to go through this emotionally? Like, it's probably not going to go well. I'd rather just take the higher draft pick and let's kind of restart. So it was frustrating for sure.
This is an interesting one, Alexis, for you on the broadcast side, because I've kind of, it's just popped up in the chat. So the Dallas Stars are doing their streaming only model, where they are going to have the games, over the internet, more accessible to in-market. And Eddie's asking if there's any hope of the Wild adopting that similar model. I would hope so, because what I saw within the last couple of days, we'll probably talk about this more when we get Alex up here. Bally's is back for another season, We got him for another year, and then after that, I would imagine there will be a decision made as to where to go next. But that would be great. A streaming-only platform that allows you to just watch wherever. I feel like that's very appealing, but I don't know. That kind of broadcast stuff is just interesting to me, but it's also very complicated.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say too. It's like nowadays, it's like anything is possible, but it feels like anytime someone has an idea, it's like you got to jump through 80 hoops to like make it happen, even the things that seem simple. So I think it's a great idea. Of course, I mean, as sports fans, you watch your team anywhere, right? Like you want to watch them whether you're at home, out of town, in bed, out at a restaurant. Like you want to be able to tune in whenever and wherever. So I have no idea if Minnesota is thinking of trying to get to that at some point. We're on the radio side of things, so things for us, we stay out of the drama. Yeah, you can listen on K-Fan. We stay out of the drama. But I don't know. It's a great idea because anytime you make the games more accessible as well, it just opens the door to more fans. And it opens the door for people to be able to tune in. And you never know when someone's watching a game for the first time and thinking, that's my team. I'm going to go buy their merch. I'm going to go buy tickets to their games. I want to go meet a player in person and get their autograph. I just think it means more money and more opportunity to get more fans, which at the end of the day, sports are a business. So to me, it makes sense to try to get to something like that at some point.
I'm going to go to watch Marcus Johansson shoot the puck one time.
Stop. We're done with the trauma.
I can't do my blood pressure will skyrocket if we go too far down that road. Okay, so we got 3 players here.
Okay.
Who do you think amongst these 3 will have the biggest impact this upcoming season? Riley Height, Liam Ogren, or Marat? Who's Nadinov?
Oh man.
That's tough.
Do you have an answer? If you have an answer, go first. I gotta think.
I love all of them. I think Height, it's going to take a little time to adjust because he hasn't necessarily played any NHL games. I know Ogren and Nadinov had a little bit more. I love both of those two. I really do. I mean, I can't necessarily pick one. I want to lean towards Ogren just because he wears 28, and that's one of my favorite numbers. It's my birthday, so I'm like, I guess I'll go with Ogren.
Okay, I'm thinking between those two as well. I agree that Height's probably going to take a little bit more time to develop, which maybe is unfair to compare him to these two. But if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Marat just because he was one of those players that gave me hope at the end of last season. So I owe it to him to expect good things from him this year. So I'm gonna go with Marat.
We'll talk about this, I'm sure, more in the 2 to 3 o'clock hour with Denny, but I'll throw my weight here behind Liam Ogren because just that size profile.
Yeah.
Like, you're talking, if you're putting a basketball team together, he's your power forward.
Which the Wild lacked a lot of that this year.
Desperately lacked.
Great point, Seth. Yeah.
Desperately lacked. So if they can get a little bit of that.
Ogren, yeah.
Hashtag get somebody else in that second line wing. So now we have to keep talking about it.
Can I interject something here?
Yeah.
Mojo's the only player I've ever seen who tries to avoid everything.
Yeah, he's playing tag out there.
Yeah. That is a very, he plays like I would play if someone told me to go play an NHL game. Yeah.
Go get the puck. Wait, you mean between those people that are going to try to hit me? No, thank you. Anybody we think on this Wild roster could regress this season? That's a tricky one too because there are a few that could.
Go ahead.
I mean, can I say Gaudreau and Johansson?
Could they regress any?
Things can always get worse, Seth.
We're right about down there. I mean, they could, and I'll say with those 2 in particular, we've seen this before from Billy during seasons, is you would hope that if they try that route again, which I'm not hugely in favor of, but if they try that route again and it doesn't work, you'd hope there'd be a pretty quick leash in like, okay, we're going to try Johansson here. It's not, and it's like 5-10 games in, it's not working. You'd hope there'd be a quick leash because the reality of the situation here is I think jobs are on the line if this team does not make the postseason, seats are going to start to get really warm because there's probably about $120 million question that is just hanging over the head of this franchise over the next couple of seasons. So it would behoove the team to try players in different spots just to see what works. But
I also think at times, and listen, I loved Dean Evison. I shed tears when he was fired. I will admit that. But also I cry about a lot of things, so take that with a grain of salt. But he was stubborn at times with his line pairings, and he also wasn't afraid to mix things up, kind of mid-game and when things got hairy, but at the end of the day, he was more stubborn than he was, willing to take a chance. So, and John Hines, he had a lot of time with this team this season because of when they brought him on, but I'm curious to see maybe what adjustments he thinks about in the offseason and what pairings he comes up with, because that was really one of the biggest criticisms I had of Dean, is that time that's like, I know you love this player and you want this to work, but it's not, so just do something else. And I don't care if it's mid-game, if you adjust it by next game, by the end of the week, you got to do something. So I think that was one of the things that made Dean a frustrating coach at times. But for players that I'm worried about, it's not so much that I think they're going to regress. One of my biggest concerns is just goaltending, just because I think there's a lot of question marks, and poor goaltending can cause a whole slew of problems. So it's one of those things that I'm like, I don't necessarily doubt the talent or expect them to do poorly. I just don't know what to expect, because there's just a lot there that I'm like, I'm a little uncertain things are going to for sure go well here, and if this goes poorly, how well is everything else going to go?
It's amazing how quick when John Hines took over, they're like running through everything, and it's like, okay, here's the stuff that Dean did. Like Freddie was his go-to center, go-to face-off guy, go-to shootout guy, go-to center late in games, and John's like, no,
we're not doing that.
We're not doing that. We're going to go with the best center on the roster, and Jule Eriksson-Ek. So it will be interesting, because I think about this, like, let's say Freddie is a fourth-line guy. You're not going to put up a ton of numbers in that spot.
Right.
So
Which is fine if that's your role.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
It just comes down to putting these guys in spots where they're more fit to be in, which is third and fourth line.
And not everybody can be the hero. So put them where they're going to work, and if that means that they're going to score less or contribute less, that's fine, as long as they're contributing something else to the lineup.
Yeah, and that is a huge part of this puzzle too, is just make sure that you're doing something even if the goals aren't coming. Like, contribute in some way.
And in the past, the Wild have had some entertaining fourth lines too.
Yes, they have.
It's true.
Brandon Duham, we wish him well.
Oh, I miss him.
This is a meaty one to kind of wrap up, and I just got a DM from State of Hockey. He is on his way. So he'll be hopping in, and I'll probably tag, since they've been just hanging out, I'll probably tag Alex and Zach in too, to get some full conversation going here. But do we still agree in the direction that Bill Guerin is taking this team?
Gosh. You just will never let me know peace again.
I brought the heat. Like, I was watching some of those Hot Ones challenge videos over the weekend, and we went straight to the Diablo sauce with some of these. I can go first.
Go ahead.
If you'd like.
Go ahead.
I will say yes, conditionally. And here's...
Love has no conditions, so.
Here's why. Here's why, because, I think about this a lot. An episode that I did earlier this summer, looking at what the roster could look like a year from now. And it's like two or three changes is all. And so on one hand, I feel like this team is close. But I feel like the necessary moves to get them to where they need to go are like root canals. Because you look at the spots in which the roster needs some improvement, and you're talking about guys like Marcus Johansson. You're talking about guys like Freddie Gaudreau, and I just don't see at this point Now, we're in August still, and I think it was 2 years ago, 2 days from now, was the Dmitry Kulikov trade. Stanley Cup champion Dmitry Kulikov, by the way. It's got a weird ring to it. So there's still time to make some changes, but I think this team is at the point where it's like they need to make the postseason for particular jobs to not start to be questioned. And I feel like they could do that if they make a couple of those moves in particular and just let some of Bill Guerin said it at the end of last season. He said these veterans at some point, they're going to have to start looking over their shoulder because these young guys are going to push them. I would like to see action in that regard. And so I will say, Judd Brackett has helped tremendously in kind of reshaping this prospect pool, which is great. I will say I'm willing to, still be on board with what Billy's doing if particular conditions are met.
Okay. I'm going to preface my answer by...
So I just gave a huge non-answer.
That's an answer, yeah. You believe, but you don't believe fully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got maybe 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
That's fair. I'm going to preface my answer by saying I am like the most optimistic sports fan of all time. I always hope for the best, and I also know anything can happen. That's the beauty of sports. So instead of trying to assume the worst or think like, oh, it's all downhill, things aren't going well, we can't win this game, we can't beat this team, we can't win a championship. Even as a Minnesota sports fan, I still hope and believe that anything can happen. That's why we love sports. You don't know what to expect. That's why you play the game. Championships aren't won on paper. I can give you more cliches if you want them, but they're all true. And so I'm going to preface it by saying, yeah, I believe, because I think Billy Guerin's a very smart man. He knows what it takes to win. So I trust somebody who's been there before. This isn't a guy who's never been there, never done that, and is trying to figure it out on the fly. He's been there in both the management position and as a player. So I respect his brains and his methods. At the same time, kind of like you, it's like at some point something different needs to happen. Yeah. But I believe he has the ability to figure out and recognize what those things are and know when to make them happen. And if there's anything about hockey, I personally believe hockey is one of those sports, and maybe I'm biased because I love this sport more than any other sport out there, but I truly believe compared to the other major sports, that hockey is one that anything can happen. You sometimes see the team that wasn't the best during the regular season go on and win a championship. We've seen it happen where you get hot at the right time, you avoid injuries at the right time, and all of a sudden the team that you maybe didn't expect to do it, who has talent but just wasn't the star of the show.
2019 St. Louis.
Yes. You see it happen. So I don't think that's always the case. I think a lot of times in the NFL, the best team does end up winning. In the NBA, the best team does end up winning, or one of the best teams. And I think in hockey, there's just a little bit more hope that, hey, something could happen that's good if you get hot at the right time. So I believe in Billy Guerin. I'm excited to see what this tenure with John Hines looks like and what he can do. But I agree, there's some jobs on the line and things need to happen quickly, but I believe that it could.
If we have another stretch to start the season of like 5-19,
don't call, don't text. Yeah.
That's going to be dicey. Mariah, what do you think?
I mean, I agree with both of you, and I don't know if I did it last season, but I know like 2 seasons ago I wrote that fans need to believe in Guerin's approach.
Come on, you guys.
And I was like, I love Guerin. I believe in his approach. I think his confidence in what he adds, like he doesn't necessarily, I mean, when he's really upset, he probably picks apart players, but I mean, he believes in the team he built, and that's what you want in a GM. And he is, as you said about Anderson, stubborn, and that's always a good thing. Yeah. But I mean, the thing that made me a little irritated, and I know some people are probably going to hate me for saying this, but was the extensions of like Zuccarello and Moose and Hartman, and I
didn't like the terms per se. Yeah.
I love all 3 of those players. Yeah. It's just. Okay, at some point we have to...
Where's this money coming from?
Yeah, I mean, we've got younger guys coming in, and eventually these guys are going to have to move on. We can't just keep letting them ride it out.
Except for Marcus, paying him whatever he asks for.
Yeah, you are president of that.
I am, yeah. Pay him what he wants. If you need money out of my bank account, just shoot me a text.
You're obligated to say that, but that's fine. On the extensions too, it comes down to term for me. Like, at the other point too, like I think about is that's probably what it took to get guys to come here at this point in the game. Like every free agent or every potential player lined up for an extension, like they know what's going on with this team right now, and they kind of, I'm sure, want assurances to be able to stay through those lean years and have a couple of opportunities when the pocketbook's open again. But if we're ranking them on terms of being irritated, Freddie's on top. I'm going to skip over the next one. Then probably Zuccarello. Then Hartman is the one that I have the least issue with, because I think he can give you quite a bit of, he can give you 15, 20, 25 goals. He's got that mean streak to him.
He flicks guys off middle of the game. I mean, you gotta respect the grind.
Does that. He throws his stick on the ice.
He does.
Nearly decapitates Matt Boldy.
Yeah. They also got.
But
I also think it's hard to, we all do it because we're sports fans. We prejudge a contract, we prejudge a signing, we prejudge.
I prejudge several things.
We do this all the time. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with it, but I also think that when we look at these contracts and look at these signings in general, not just speaking about these players specifically, but I kind of think at the end of the day, you gotta wait until it's all said and done to lay down a judgment, because maybe one of these players is gonna play like they got paid. And they're going to step up, and we're going to look back on it in a few years and say, you know what? At the time, I was a little hesitant about that signing or what they were paying him, but he earned that. He was a really key player for us, and he earned that paycheck. So even like when I see these signings and stuff, it's like initially you react and you have an initial judgment, and then I try to tell myself, well, let's wait and see. Maybe it'll be worth the money. And you don't know how the season's going to unfold and what else might be added or subtracted from the team throughout the course of the season. But it's natural, I think, for us to look at it and be like, especially as people who we work in the sport,
that's what I'm paid to do.
Right? It's like we need to judge it a little bit, but we'll see what happens when it's all said and done.
Final one. You both have been fantastic here for the better part of an hour. We've got State of Hockey joining us here in a little bit. He's in the building, and I think we're gonna tag Alex and Zach in here too for this second hour of the show. In or out playoffs, end of the season. I'm gonna make
another one I hate doing at the beginning of the year. You go first.
So I'm definitely not going to save this and call you out on it when the opposite thing happens at the end of the year. I'm kidding.
So much pressure.
I'm going optimistic. I'm saying it.
Okay. I am too, because I gotta put my money where my mouth is. I just said I'm an optimistic fan.
We'll stick together.
Yeah, there we go. You can come for both of us if you got a problem with what we said. So. You looking with terror in your eyes. Are you okay?
I'm torn here.
We're just having flashbacks to last season, aren't you?
Yes, because I think if I go back to before the season started last year, I had the Wild third in the division because I said, and I quote, I don't think Winnipeg is great. How'd that work out? Yeah, not good at all. I look at it this way, and you've got Colorado, you've got Dallas, you've got Nashville now, you've got Winnipeg, and I feel like those teams are clearly better, like on paper. Now, obviously, there can be catastrophic injuries. Nashville could go to a U2 concert and just completely fall apart. Like these things happen, and so it's very possible that one of those top four is going to slip. Yeah. But I have the Wild right now kind of right in the same area as St. Louis, in either 5th and or 6th. They've got to be able to consistently beat those teams in front of them. They're going to have to leapfrog somebody, and one of those top four is going to have a very, very subpar season.
I will say, Two things quick. One, I expect Minnesota to be a wild card team. I don't see them in one of those top spots. I see them in a battle at the end of the season to secure a playoff spot. And the other thing, more concerning to me, is Minnesota in recent years has been victim to Dallas, has been victim to the Blues, has been victim to Winnipeg. They cannot beat teams in their own division right now. They have really, really struggled to win those 4-point games, especially at key points in the season where it's like, hey guys, you can't lose to the Blues, and then they lose 6-1. It's like, no, that's not what we said. We said you can't lose to the Blues. So I think I need to see more out of them against their own division. I mean, they played well against Chicago, but so would Mariah and I if we put skates on, so that's not saying much. So I want to see them do better against their own division. So I feel like after a month or two of the season, I'll have a better feeling of what I think this team is going to do. But right now, I would say potentially a wild card team.
Well, then I'm gonna be the other side of the coin, and I'm gonna say out.
Oh my God, Seth, you are such a hater.
I know.
Yeah, we're cutting this clip when they make it. Just so you know.
I'll cut it myself. I'll keep that, and I will hang on to it because that's one of the things I think probably from last season is that it just you watch every game, you go to every game, and it just gets beaten into you like, oh good, Dallas again.
Yeah.
Like here's a 5-0 or a 6-0 loss. It all depends. It all depends on what team shows up at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And if they can avoid some of those atrocious, if they can maybe cut the penalties down a little bit.
Yeah, that too. Or just don't give up power play goals. One or the other would be nice.
That would help. If they can do that, if Phil Gustafson can rebound to closer to what he was 2 years ago, less like he was last year. If he rebounds, and if somebody steps up, like that second line spot on the wing, if somebody steps in and can give you 20 goals there, that goes a long way. And so, again, conditional. If particular things happen, I could see them fighting for a wild card spot. But as of right now, I just.
They also need to play 60 minutes. I wanted to take my shoe off and beat myself over the head with my own shoe. Every single time we get into the third period, it's like, I couldn't feel good about any lead. I couldn't feel good about a tie. I couldn't feel good about a lead. If we were losing, I was like, well, we're going to probably lose by even more. Every third period, I didn't care how they played. They could have played some of the best hockey for the first 2 periods, and I never felt good going into the third period. So they got to learn how to play.
It used to be the opposite.
Yeah, they used to be like, we could be down 7-1.
2 years ago, they annihilated teams in the third period, but the last couple of years, it's been like, okay, how many goals are they giving up in the second? How many goals are they giving up in the third?
Ugly.
Just not great. Well, hey, ladies, you've been great for our. Let's have the crowd here give them a nice hand. PWHL and Minnesota Wild takes. We're going to get some of the other contributors in here, but Alexis, if you want to hang around and just have a good time. Mariah, I know you've got to get going here in a little bit, so.
Where are the beers at?
I probably am going to grab one myself here at some point, but,
after that conversation.
But thanks, ladies. Let's get everything set up for hour number 2.
Do you want to come?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Is it hams that they're doing for this?
And grain belt.
Which one do you want?
I'm doing grain belt.
You already ate it.
That's my own.
I apologize for whoever has to sit on this chair.
Have you two probably share my free.
Yeah, it's actually here too. Are you here to be at the games again this season?
I think for sure.
Okay.
Doesn't matter, wherever. I don't know.
Okay, did you go to every Wild game typically?
The women's games.
Okay. Nice. Okay. Cool.
It's been a long time.
I'm usually not in the press box for the Wild though, because we're in the basement for a radio studio. Every now and then I'll pop up there, but for the most part, how's it going? Nice to see you. You too. I'm hanging around, so I'll watch you guys. I'm gonna go get some my beer. Do you guys want a beer?
Get it.
Okay.
I thought of that.
Work. Well, I'll see you around then.
Yeah.
I don't know which
left hand.
My buddies were like, get the camera out and stuff.
Probably just set down another chair.
Yeah, stack a couple.
Yeah. Maybe that gets a little too high. We'll see.
Or can you stack these?
Oh no. No, we're gonna get another chair to put in front of this chair.
Oh, I see. So go like that. Yep.
Oh, I'm such an idiot.
Go like this.
That's why I have journalism. Yeah, fine.
I should have been an architect.
I know. Push it closer.
That'll work.
Good.
That'll work. Now I just gotta see if it's level. I'm fighting this thing all the way.
It's fine. Hey, there we go.
Oh yeah, I suppose I could have just looked at the TV. God.
Shoot.
What an idiot.
No, that makes too much sense.
Is that good? That's good. Probably pull it back. That's fine. Where do you want me, in the middle?
You can go middle. Poppy, you want to hop in? I think we can
I
do
should have read the invite better. I didn't realize Micheletti was doing this.
18.
Would it come down with a cold or something?
If you want to close the shade behind you, you got to go.
Oh, these are just trash bags. All right. All right. We've got hour 2 coming up here with, we've got me on the screen, we got Zach,
Hey guys.
we got Alex, we got State of Hockey from the Sota Pod. You guys will just have to, I only have 3 mics, so you guys will just have to share, but that's fine. Let's start with you. How's the summer been going? You've obviously had,
It's different.
yeah,
It's different.
little change.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex.
Kids are hard, huh? I should have respected my parents so much more.
I was going to say, are you looking to me to answer that? Because I can't.
I don't know. You're sure?
I mean, as far as
I go past that.
Wow, you really put me in the blender there.
Oh, nope. We're fresh off of a wedding reception I had to go to last night, where literally the attire was labeled as country classic, and at no point in my life have I ever had to consider what country classic was.
What? What does that even mean?
I don't know. I just went to Twitter and immediately asked everyone, like, do I go longer or shorter when I'm cutting these jorts today? Like, what do I do here? But it was like out on, like, the guy has like 10 acres. It was a cool setup, and he actually like hid a bunch of coolers across the property. And he's now like 3 miles away from the new Dangerous Man location. So like one of the coolers was Dangerous Man. He like told me that early on. I'm like, oh, Easter egg, let's go.
Are there coolers that have not been found yet? And can you give me the directions?
Well, it's about an hour drive, so you might want to pass.
Is it on my way back home?
No. It is not on your way, and I imagine, given the group there, everything has been found.
It's all good.
Yeah, it's gone.
Just tell us a little bit about, I know we have a pretty widely overlapped audience, but for those that aren't super aware, just, you and Joe Smith started the Fellowship of the Rink over the last few months. It's been longer than that, hasn't it?
Yeah, it was like end of February, which it's been a really weird start because like we had to delay the start of it because of my kid.
Yeah.
Then he just had a kid at the beginning of the summer.
Jeez.
And I thought he was back and good, and then all of a sudden he's like, oh no, like as soon as the season starts, I'm taking another like 2 months because apparently The Athletic has the most plush paternity leave ever. And Russo's just like, sweet, all right, I got this. Open the season with like, what, a full month of road games? He's like, all right, got it. But no, it's been good. Getting a pretty good spread of people to jump on with us, like whether it's people currently in the prospect system, a lot of Gopher players. Only actually had one like actual staple Wild player. I know we got a couple that we're working on, but the one that we just interviewed a couple days ago, we'll drop it for the opening week of the season, is Mr. Dean Evison, who will be making his return.
Dean,
let me just say, I don't think anyone. There are probably fans who have issues with some of the coaching, whether or not that's well-founded. That's up up for discussion, but there is no one that can dislike the human Dean Evison. The guy is an absolute beauty, and he holds absolutely nothing back.
He's unfiltered. That's
Nothing beats those Dean Evison memes on Twitter. Like, you can reuse those for like 7 more years, and everyone's gonna know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, easily.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's subbing in the Creed Bratton or it's just him beating the wheels off of Darby, I don't care. They're all beautiful.
breaking the clipboard. You name it. Let's start, since we finished hour 1 with some wild chatter. Let's start with that, and we'll move to prospects, and then we got 2 pretty heavy Gopher hockey followers here that I'm sure can give us a little bit on that too. So, what do we think about? Obviously, it's still August, but the season's going to be here before we know it. So, what do we think about the 2024-2025 Minnesota Wilds? I'll let you go first, Hoppy. What do you think we're going to see from this team? Do you think we're going to see an improvement from last year? Do you think we're going to see more of the same?
I mean, it's a cop-out answer, but it's pretty much the same team. It's can they stay healthy?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see if any of the young players get a real chance, because I just don't know what the salary cap situation is going to be. Like, if they don't move Freddie Evison, if they don't move Gustafson, they're going to be really tight.
Yeah.
And I know they want to get. I don't know if it's going to be Ogren, Height, maybe both of them get a sniff, but getting one of them in could certainly change the dynamic of things. I don't know what their center depth looks like right now. I know what's in it. I don't know how they're going to construct it. Depending on who you ask, it could be Eck, Hartman, or Rossi that's going to be the first line center. I kind of want to see how some of that shakes out in training camp before I make real decisions, but that was my biggest concern last year outside of, we'll just scrap special teams for now, but so one-dimensional, right?
Yeah.
Like, that first line carried everything, and every team knew how to game plan for it. And that's, if they can find a way to shuffle that a little bit, have 2 lines that can come at you back-to-back, it's going to change a lot.
It's amazing how one spot in the lineup can make just all the difference. Like, if you can find somebody to sit on that second line wing spot and just, 200 shots, shoot 10%, that's 20 goals. I'm not great with math, but that doesn't seem like that's that hard, but look what we had last year. Alex, what do you think? Where are you at with the season? What do you think about this Minnesota Wild team a month or so out from the start?
Yeah, getting Jared Spurgeon back, I think, is going to be huge.
Will help.
Healthy, especially with the penalty kill. The thing I'm most curious about is what they're going to do with the goaltending. I've never seen a 3 goalie rotation ever work, but it looks like that's what they're trying to do, and that could affect the salary cap too, as far as getting some of these young guys to play. Riley Height might not be able to make the team if they keep Wallstead, so that's going to be very interesting. And special teams, that's the name of the game, especially. I mean, the Central just got so much harder with Nashville making all the moves they did, getting Stamkos, Marchessault, Brady Shea. So, and Utah's going to be a lot better too. I think people are really underestimating them. So it's going to be a barn burner in this. I think the Central is one of the toughest divisions in the NHL. So health and special teams, like we always talk about.
I could not love Barry Trotz any more than I currently do because of a couple of things. Number one, the fact that he coins one of the all-time new phrases in serial winners. When he was putting that roster together, he's like, we're going to find guys that are serial winners to put onto this roster. And I'm like, I've never heard anybody say that, but I'm going to steal it, and I'm going to use it a lot. And with this Yaroslav Askarov situation, which now there were some new details about that they were trying to work it out behind the scenes, and Askarov tried to kind of force their hand by making it public. And Barry Trotz was like, I'm not going to play your game. We'll just send you to the San Jose Sharks. Good luck. Now, I would argue that's a much better spot for him to become a starting goalie, obviously. But it's going to be another few years before they start to actually win some games. So if he's okay with that, he's okay with not winning for a few years, that'll work out fine for him. Zach, what do you think about the season?
I was going to come out and be like, all right, cool, I'm going to talk about something they're not going to talk about. and it's goaltending. I feel like, the key to having a good hockey team is with consistent goaltending. And, the Wild are walking in this year with 3 solid goalies. Obviously, Wallstedt is down there as well, but, it just depends on how many times he can get in the crease. We've seen it in the last couple of years, especially last season. He gets throttled by Dallas, and then he shuts out the Blackhawks. And I just think it starts with consistent starts. It's going to be different. Obviously you got Hall of Famer Marc-Andre Fleury, and I think the number 1 player this year to watch is Phil Gustafsson. Seriously, it's really insane that we have a young goalie prospect who people are going to get in the jumble and have a 3 goalie team. It's something I've never seen in the NHL, and I feel like. If you have a consistent 1-2 going, obviously like a $10 million Sergei Bobrovsky is going to win you a Stanley Cup, and a Skinner's not. I mean, clearly, we don't have a number 1 yet, and it's really interesting with that. I really don't know how it's going to work. It's going to be an interesting shuffle. You're just going to be juggling balls all year long, and it's going to be interesting. Will Gustafsson get his year turned around? That's the number 1 question I have walking in this year. And can Marc-Andre Fleury mentor Wallstedt? Obviously, he's still here for that reason, but will Wallstedt get games?
Yeah, that's going to be the key. And, there are a lot of things to keep in mind with this team. Health, as Hoppy mentioned, just look at the number of injuries that this team suffered last year. 2 players on the entire roster played all 82 games. Brock Faber, Marco Rossi, that's it. Everybody else missed time now, whether it be 3 or 4 games, which is not a huge deal, or 50. The depth is going to be key, and I feel like this team has a better handle on depth going into this season. Whether it be some of those kind of 4A guys in the Iowa roster, like the Travis Boyds or Devin Shore, some of those guys. Or these prospects, are they going to give them the opportunity to really get a crack? Let's just go around the group here. Let's start with Riley Heidt. Do we think he's going to make this roster, or is it going to? I feel like at this point it's going to require a move to free up a roster spot. But if he impresses in camp, if he lights it up in camp, are the Wild really not going to have him on the roster?
Again, I don't know with the salary cap if they're gonna. That's the main thing, because if you're going with 3 goalies, I don't know how.
Maybe I should pull that up right now. Yeah, the Wilds currently have $750K in salary cap space, which is
nothing.
I would, if they would just allow me to hold on to that for now, I certainly would not object. But it's not a lot.
No,
it's enough to, depending on who gets hurt, it's enough to maybe call up one guy.
And you don't want to play games short. We've seen other teams do it, and it's not.
If I had it my way, we would never do another 11-7 ever again. Frustrating.
They could give him his 9 games and then go back to junior. That could be it. But I don't see him being. We would love to see him the entire season, but salary cap.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the salary cap is a factor here for Heidt. I think there's still a lot we got to see on whether or not he can crack the roster. One, from his talent, which I think that's more arguable, that could translate quicker. Mm-hmm. But look at the roster.
Yeah.
Who are you spotting down? It's pretty much, at this point, it's going to be him or Ogren that's slotting in somewhere in that middle 6, and that's really all there's room for, unless you're going to have 5 mil sitting up in the press box, which I don't think the Wild are known for doing. A la John Merrill.
Yeah, clearly over the deadline, there's deliberate moves to sign players who aren't our prospect pool, and clearly you're limiting roster spots there on top of giving them a chance. It's clear where the vision is with this team. And I don't think it's going to be tough for him to even crack a spot, especially if he made moves over the deadline to keep him further down.
I do think, though, Bill Guerin has shown that if Riley Heidt comes in and takes, training camp by storm, he's going to get it in.
Yeah.
I don't know how. He'll figure that out later, but he's not going to hesitate if he thinks the player's ready.
Well, and that's the thing, too, is it's like at some point, you get the comfort of having all these veteran guys on the roster, but if a prospect comes in and is clearly better, like you just got to do whatever it takes to get those guys in positions to not only be on the roster but to succeed too. Like that was a huge debate last year with Adam Beckman. Was like, well, how come he never popped? It's like, well, he was mostly a fourth line guy. Now, did he warrant a place in the lineup higher than that with his play? That's certainly up for debate, but it would have been nice to at least see him get a chance. Like we saw Sammy Walker over the last couple of years get opportunities on that second line. Like, it's a spot that they've been trying to fill for a couple of years now. And so if he's ready for it, like let's just get him up here and let's just get it done. Denny from the back has a good question for us on the chat, and I don't know the answer to this. So hopefully either we have it here or we can find it. But
Somebody up there should know.
let's say if Riley Height does go back to the OHL and the Wild suffer an injury at some point. Thank you. If the Wild suffer an injury at some point and want to bring him back, can they? How does that work?
Yeah, they can bring him at any time. It's just as soon as he eclipses that 9-game buffer, he is stuck. He cannot go back. So yeah, he could go back down and then be brought in again, which I think is the best case scenario. If you find a way with salary cap to get him in for those 9 games, if he sticks, great. If not, send him back down. Maybe he plays for the World Junior team, which I don't know, early roster projections still say no. I'm not mad though, because I don't want to have to cheer for a Canadian. So. Just like Lambos, everyone was all upset that he wasn't there. I'm like, I'm kind of okay with this.
That makes some sense. And so if he doesn't break camp with the team, they could say, okay, Marcus Johansson is going to be out for 2-3 games.
I think
realistic.
So then they could bring him in. And let's say somebody goes on long-term injured reserve, then you could bring him in to fill that spot for the year. Okay. That makes sense. I want to talk about some of these guys that are on the roster bubble. Graham Clark, for one. A guy who I like what he brings to the table. But, again, I think this comes down to the construction of the roster right now. Are we going to see him play? At any point, or is he just kind of at the mercy of whoever is healthy or not on this roster?
I don't think we'll ever see him. He's probably in that same type of like Kyle Rao mold where you're
Kyle Rao reference.
Not good enough for the NHL, but
yeah,
perfect at the where you're at the AHL and
Quad A.
Where you're at with the prospect. Rankings or where they're at with in the GM's eyes. Like, I just don't see him being. He's a quality minor league hockey player, in my opinion.
I see him being different though, in that like a lot of these younger prospects, you're not going to want them doing what Jesper Wallstedt sounds like he'll be doing all year, which is just cruising up and down 35.
Yeah.
And I think Graham Clark is a guy that you're comfortable doing that with, like to be that pinch filler.
Sure.
He's not going to be a guy that's going to get long stretches, I don't think, unless he comes up and really takes advantage of that opportunity. But he's a guy that brings experience. He's dominated at the AHL level. Just to get Iowa competitive again after last year being such a horrible lost season, just getting in a position where that team can compete is in itself going to help a lot of those prospects.
Hoppy, you guys have been doing the prospect rankings over the summer with recently deceased Sound the Foghorn?
Yeah, apologies to everyone that's listened. It's an absolute cluster.
Well, so you recorded it all in one, like 5 hours worth of content. Mm-hmm. Who have been some of the names, and you're going from like the 30s all the way down, I think top 10's coming up here this week or next. Who have been some of the names that have surprised you with where you guys have cumulatively ranked them? Obviously, I've got the list here, and there are some that kind of surprise me a little bit, but...
I mean, do you want to lead with the ones that you're surprised by, or?
I certainly can. Like, I look at this as the guys that are potentially closest to being able to help. I feel like Samuel Levi maybe is a year or so away from being able to be, maybe not the backup to Jesper, but certainly like a fill-in guy if needed for injuries. So he might be one that I would rank a little higher myself. Jack Pert, St. Cloud State Husky, go Huskies. He's another one that I would be a little more, probably have a little higher. The big one though, and this is the one that I want us all to discuss, is Charlie Stramel.
Yeah, I kind of figured that's where that was.
Yeah, I was just trying to lead the conversation towards Charlie Stramel, but at 16, right? Yeah, where'd he go?
Yep, 16 cumulatively. Yeah, so what we did, we've got 3 people from the Sota Pod, spoke Z, Isha, and myself, and then the 3 from, as you said, deceased, Son the Foghorn. R.I.P. to peace. The 6 of us came together, gave all of our rankings for the top, I think it's 33 guys that we deemed are eligible within this. Like Sammy Walker, for example, not included because we only took players under the age of 25 who are still Calder eligible.
Okay.
So like Brett, who's Nadinov, even though he's played NHL games, he is included because he's still Calder eligible.
Okay.
And yeah, with that, we've all got very different ways that we go about ranking them, which makes the banter and discussion, for some, maybe enjoyable. I don't know. For me, it's just, it's a lot. But Charlie Stramel was an interesting one because I said when we recorded that we're all going to be wrong. I just don't know what direction. So everyone, I think, besides me, had him at like 17 or 18, and I had him at 13. It's tough because you don't want to like make excuses over and over for prospects.
Yeah.
He's had valid excuses year after year. And so for me, this is the year where excuses are no more, right? He's had injury issues. He came in and played for an absolutely terrible Wisconsin team in his first year where, let's be real, like as a true freshman, that's a tough go. Then Mike Hastings comes in and realized that Charlie Stramel does not have his AARP card, so he is not allowed to play for him. So he basically gets dogged the whole season, and again, the injury to start didn't help. But now he's chosen his spot, he gets a new lease on life, and this is what the transfer portal's for. Like, I think it gets abused, and there's good and bad, but this is the like 5% where, yes, we need the transfer portal to help a kid like Charlie who got brought in by a coach, got fired right away, gets cast aside. And now he's with his coach from the National Development Program, Nightingale. I don't need him to come out and be like their first line center or anything like that. If he can put up 10 and 10, that's a great season. I want to see what he does in all aspects of the ice though. Like I want to see what he can do power play, penalty kill, just how he adapts and goes into what is going to be a very competitive team in what's become, weirdly, the most competitive conference of college hockey. So I don't need to see anything like groundbreaking from him. I need him to show us what we expected when he got drafted. Because everyone like looks at it as this monumental reach. I know Micheletti loves himself some Gabe Perreault, and I get it. Like I thought they were picking Perreault there too, but Charlie Stramel, like it wasn't a huge reach. This is a guy that was probably going to go at the end of the first round anyways. And at times, like the year prior, like talking to Z way too early on our rankings, he was sitting like just outside of the top 10 for a little bit. So this is a guy that has the promise, and he fits an organizational need, being a big-bodied center. And we love us some Rasmus Kumpelainen, and he's one that got a lot of buzz in our chat. But I just think Charlie is going to come in this year, and he is either going to fall off the map entirely for me if he can't figure it out, or he's going to be in my top 10 because he figured it out, and now he fits a glaring need for the Wild.
I will say too, having had a chance to see him at development camp, he's filled out. Like he looks the part.
He's solid. He's there.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a good year. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like Hoppy said, this is the make it or break it year for him. He's in the perfect situation. He's back with Adam Nightingale, his junior coach, when he put up great numbers, and with an old buddy in Isaac Howard too that transferred there, and Michigan State's they made the tournament last year. They should make it again, this year. So, it's going to be a lot of, high-profile games, and if he performs well, that should get him to sign. You would think after this season, because you wouldn't want him to play his senior year. So yeah, it's a huge year for him.
Outside of Stramel, which prospects is everybody most excited to see, whether it be elevate to a new level this year, or to just get an opportunity maybe for the first time to, put up some good film and really impress within the Wild prospect landscape? I'll go first to give both of you a chance to come up with an answer. And Zach, you got one too. I think I'm going to go with Aaron Kibiharu. I think this year.
Because we just want to see him play here.
Yeah, 100%. And the confidence on the night of the draft to be able to go up to Bill Guerin and say, "You guys just pulled the biggest steal in the draft." Like, you got to know that you've got skills to be able to back that up, because that is not just something that's not just something that you say in like the heat of the moment. Like, he's got the conviction to back it up. And so, after having dealt with injuries, to put him in a position to where the Wild had a chance to draft him, I just want to see what he's got to be able to, get a little better idea as to where he fits in this prospect system. But players, if they have confidence first and foremost, that goes a long way, and I think he definitely has it. So Aaron Kibiharu would be mine. What about Alex? What about you?
I'm, as Hoppy knows, a big college hockey guy, so looking forward to seeing how Jack Hurt does in Iowa. That team really needed help on defense, so he's going to get all the opportunity in the world to develop down there. And he was so much fun to watch at St. Cloud. I saw him when he first got in, and he came in as a true freshman. So I'm really excited to watch him. The Ritchie kid that we just drafted too, that was I thought it was an awesome pick by Judd Rackett. But really looking forward to seeing how he develops. He was another guy that was kind of banged up last season. So another guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing fully healthy.
Mateo, who is literally here, said, "Watch out for Ryder Ritchie," so that's one vote for Ritchie. And Alaskan Wampa, Rasmus Kumpalainen, and David Spacek are the ones that he's going to be excited to keep an eye on here this season.
Rasmus Kumpalainen is definitely one that I would have said. It's tough though, because obviously he's one of the harder ones for fans to watch going back to Liga. But this is a guy who is just like a thoroughbred unicorn. I don't know. We joke, we call him Baby Yager on our show, because like he literally has the build and physique, nowhere near the skill or the style. I don't think he can pull off the jean jacket like Yager did or the mullet, but this is a guy that, like, with his size and using it properly too, because you see a lot of big guys that don't know how to use their size, and this is a guy that he just plays the hip check protect all the way through the zone. He has the skill in every area offensively, and it's going to be really cool to see him this year go back and play against men, wanting to go back and play for his hometown team, the Pelicans, which what a sweet jersey that is. But to see him play against men, and it's going to be a lot more of a like heavy checking, defensive stalwart type league, where we're going to kind of see that other element too. Which we saw, he can play in the OHL when it's run and gun, let's go score. I want to see him put that other piece in, and he's a guy that I'm super excited to watch in this pool. But we could list off like 5 or 6 guys that all easily fit this category.
Yeah, there are just a ton. I mean, obviously people are going to be keeping an eye on Zeev, see how he does.
Following up a 50-point.
I'm not even he wouldn't even been on my list because I know what he's going to go on and do.
You know what he's going to bring to the table. I mean, there's going to be a lot of eyes on all the different defensemen in Iowa this year, because that was it was a struggle last year for that Iowa team, to say the least. But I think a lot of that I think some of that can be attributed to just not having somebody to take the lead and show them what to do, because you expected that Dakota Mermis, whose name I could not remember, at some point earlier this week, completely blanked on it. Could
Well,
not.
just think he was their
gonna be
captain,
captain.
and then they didn't have anybody.
He literally did not play at all in Iowa, and so all those young guys had to figure it out. But there's still Carson Lambos, Damon Hunt.
We gotta put some respect back on Carson Lambos too. Fans have given up on that poor kid.
Yeah, I think these guys are just gonna all benefit from a little bit of a step up in performance, and I think just because of the defensive injuries that we saw, especially last year, you look down and you're like, well, one of these guys should be ready to step up and fill in, and it's not necessarily how that works all the time. And so it's going to be a big year for Iowa all around, but Kyle Masters, Jack Hurts, Carson Lambos, Damon Hunt. Another one that I think is a little further down the list that I'm intrigued by because of what he's billed to be is Ryan O'Rourke. Billed to be just a bulldog and a guy who does not take any S from anybody, and is somebody that I think, depending on role, I think could help this team out considerably.
He's kind of got the same vibe as Strammel this year, though, where it's like this is more or less his last chance to show that he can still be that guy. He's the one that slowly tumbled down the charts. We do this like once every 6 months, the rankings, and he just like slowly moves down. Not because he's doing anything wrong, but because we keep on bolstering the pool and he just gets pushed back by default.
Yeah. Let's talk about Jesper, because obviously there's still a lot that could change with this goalie situation. Philip Gustafson and Marc-Andre Fleury right now are your two starters. We've got a month before the season starts. Let's just go around the whole group here. Will Philip Gustafson still be on the roster by the time the season starts?
Well, he or she?
You can answer either way.
I mean, just for like the sake of calmness, I kind of want him on the team. I want him to prove, obviously last year was just brutal. I mean, and Wild fans are so impatient with goaltending, as they should be. And, it's just been a little interesting, but at what point does Rolstead come in and who's going to take that spot out? Obviously it's going to be Gustafson. So it's like, I want Rolstead to, make the step, and I want him to get consistent reps. But also Gustafson can definitely prove himself, and I think last year was just an off year.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, I think he's the number one guy to watch this year. If he plays well, it's going to be tough for Wallstedt to come in. Obviously, Marc-Andre Fleury is going to be there too. So, yeah, it's going to be hard. I want Wallstedt to come up, but I also want Gustafson to be consistent and show that he is obviously in the league for a reason.
Yeah, it was really hard on Gus last season, but like Zach said, he's very key to this team getting back into the playoffs. They need him to, if he can't replicate 2 years ago, get close to that. I mean, because the division got so much better than when he was, a rock star a couple of years ago. I've never seen a NHL team have 3 goalie rotation and have it be long-term successful. So, like Hoppy said, does he deserve to be on the team? That's tough. There's so many unknowns with that, and keeping all 3 of those guys happy, because Marc-Andre didn't have to re-sign here. He had to have known what they're going to do as far as the plan with this rotation. So I hope they can keep all 3 healthy. I hope Fleury can stay healthy too, because this is his last year, legend, and you want him to go out on a high, not on a low, or get injured and out for the year.
I'm okay trading him if you get commensurate value back, but this is a goalie that is a 1A, worst case 1B with his talent. I think last year, let's be real, nothing went right.
Yeah.
Could he have played better? Absolutely. But to say that he's the reason that the season started the way it did is also pretty wild in my opinion. Not weird. But I just don't want to give him away to clear cap space when I think he's the best goalie on the roster. I also, for me, it's tough because we all love Marc-Andre Fleury. We all are super excited about Jesper Wallstedt. You tell me which one of those goalies you want playing more than 50% of the games this year. Because I don't want either of them playing more than 50%. Gustafsson, there's a world where I want him playing, 50 games. And I don't think either of them are capable. And maybe Wallstedt proves us wrong, but we've seen a pretty limited NHL sample going up against the worst team in the league and destroying them, and getting absolutely buried by the best team in the league because we decided to put him in the worst spot ever.
On national TV.
Like, no one knows what he is. We see the promise in the AHL. We're very excited about him, but like to say that he's ready to jump in and take a lion's share at the NHL level, that's a big gamble to take before we even see any games.
Here's where I'm at with it. I agree with Hoppy about if you're going to trade Gustafsson, you have to get good value in return. And the only situation I see left for the Wild is if they find a team that suffers an injury that expects to go to the postseason, that they could then flip him to fill a starting spot. Like if, the big one recently that has kind of trended, and I think you and I will talk about this for tomorrow's episode more, is Vancouver. Because they're sitting in a spot right now where they're like, we don't know what we're going to get with Thatcher Demko. It sounds like he's going to be out for a while, and that's a team that has massive playoff aspirations, to where maybe you can find a return that makes sense to make that move. But I don't want to do it just for the sake of opening the spot, because we know 100% that Marc-Andre Fleury will not be back next year. Like, that's already written in stone, that's already set. And so, if you get rid of Philip Gustafsson, then the only goalie that you have on the roster is Jesper. That's it. And that's a tall ask for a young goalie. That's a tall ask for a rookie to, hey, you've got as many of these games as you can are yours. That's a tall ask. And so it kind of, to me, is like I would rather have Philip Gustafsson here next year as well for the final year of his deal, so that he can, if Jesper's going to play in 40 games, Gustafsson can play in 42. If Jesper's going to play in 45, Gustafsson can play in 37. Like, I don't worry as much about the split going into next season as I do if you would just say we're going to take what is left of Marc-Andre Fleury and try to run him into the ground and hope that Jesper can take what's left. Like, I think it just, at this point, for where this franchise is heading, I think it makes more sense to have Gustafsson on the roster next year as opposed to not having him this year. Because, the other part about this too, Jesper's 21? 21, 22. He's still very young. His opportunity's not going anywhere. Like, it's not like we are questioning whether or not he's good. We're not in the Askarov situation with Jesper. Like, his path isn't blocked in that vein that Askarov's was. And so I just would rather have Gus here so that you can have him on the roster next year to help Jesper along full time. And then at that point, Jesper would be ready to take over the reins, and maybe Levi is ready to be the backup, or you just go find it. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. You guys want to talk about Gophers? Gopher hockey?
Yeah.
Because obviously both of you keep pretty good tabs, I would say, on the Gophers. So Alex, how's the squad looking heading into this season? Obviously a ton of talent on this Gopher team, but are they going to be one that's going to be able to be one of those final teams in the mix at the end of the season?
Definitely, and getting Jimmy Snuggerud back was huge. We saw one of their chief rivals in the Big Ten, Michigan. They just lost Rutger McGroarty in that trade that was made.
Rutger McGroarty, now a Pittsburgh Penguin,
which hockey's pumped about. But I mean, that's a huge loss. We saw with the Gophers when they lost Logan Cooley, this past season, how much, difference that made. But getting Jimmy to come back was huge, and they were able to get Matthew Wood out of the transfer portal from UConn, who is a Nashville Predators draft pick, and he is, exactly what they needed, a power forward that can help on the power play. So I'm really excited to see how he does in the step up in competition. And they have to replace Justin Close, who graduated, and Nathan Airy, British Columbia kid, is coming in and is going to be the number one goalie. So we'll see. It's gonna come down to goaltending, I think, for that team.
Funny how often that happens at every level.
Yeah,
It's like it's going to come down to the goalie.
But I think this is going to be one of Motzko's best teams that he's ever had. The D core is stacked again. Really looking forward to seeing the step that Ryan Chesley makes again in Sam Rizal. Those guys were impressive last year, and now they get another year under development. I mean, they're going to have multiple guys playing the NHL here soon. So it'll be fun to another fun season at Mariucci.
Hoppy, what do you think about this upcoming Gopher squad?
I mean, yeah, I'm never the one to use the goalie cliche, but like Alex is so right. I've never looked at a team on paper and been so sure that if we can just get like serviceable goaltending, it's a Frozen Four team. Like it's insane. They hardly lost anything. They lost two, well, I guess maybe three forwards because we're under the impression that Rhett Pitlick is not coming back. The blue line's intact. Like there's no reason that this team shouldn't dominate, especially with the addition of Wood. I'm really interested to see what we get out of Snuggerud and Oliver Moore this year, though. Both of them started real strong, came back after World Juniors, and just were not the same. Like, you could tell they were fighting it, they were trying to force stuff, and they weren't themselves. If we can get them playing at the top of their game for the majority of the season, like, it's a completely different dynamic for this team. And they both have it, we know that. It's one thing to say it, it's another to see it.
Yeah. Oops. What is the Big Ten looking like? Who will be the teams that will be competing with the Gophers, not only for the top spot in the conference, but potential to make it through the NCAA tournament too? Yeah,
it's Michigan and Michigan State. I don't see Ohio State or Wisconsin, being anywhere near those other teams. Penn State too. They had a really tough year last year. So.
Yeah, they did.
Minnesota and Michigan schools.
Yeah, it's definitely Michigan State's the one to beat. Michigan will be good. Everyone's going to freak out about them losing McGroarty. They've still got a ridiculous group over there. And that's turned into one of the bigger rivalries lately for the Gophers. Like, there's a lot of hate there. Wisconsin, the old folks' home will be fine. Hastings, he just can't help himself.
No.
Like, if you're a 25-year-old looking for a home, find him. Yeah, I don't know. In the Big Ten, they'll be fine though. Like, they'll be somewhere in the top 2 or 3, regardless of how things shake out. It's just more what's going to happen towards the end of the year. Like, we've seen a lot of years, especially under Motzko, where this team's playing some of their best hockey going into the postseason, and they ride that high. Last year, not the case, and we saw the results. So it's really just what can they do. Like, I'm not worried about how they come out of the gate necessarily. I'm worried, like, come January, February, what's this team look like? And if they're firing on all cylinders and they've got a goalie, I'm pretty excited.
The NCAA tournament for college hockey, it's such a roller coaster. You look at who won at Denver. Denver should have been done in the first game, and they survived. Davis, the goalie, was cramping, and it looked like he was, they were dead to rights, and they ended up, winning that game and going all the way. And Zeke Boyum was incredible, and so. That was fun to watch that here. That probably influenced Bill Guerin into drafting.
Another prospect though that was like very highly touted in our rankings, Riga Lorenz, with an absolute rip in that championship game. Oh my God! No, sorry, that was the semifinal game. But he, top of the circles, just turned around and tucked in top corner, and it was beautiful.
I'm a sucker for a cannon of a slap shot or one-timer. Like, if you're a player that has just an absolute rocket for a shot, I'll be in your corner.
Jimmy Snuggerud, he when he fires the puck, it's different than everybody else. It's so much fun to watch.
Well, Micheletti, who would you rather have? Him, Ogren, you're up.
Oh man,
pick 2. Oh. No pressure.
You're off and Jimmy, but I don't know. I like that goal scoring. It's unfortunate that he's going to be a St. Louis Blue.
Why do you hate Liam Ogren?
I do not.
You all just heard it.
I do not hate him. I just, Jimmy.
No, it's hard. I love Jimmy too. I would love to have him, but
just him being a gopher, that too.
The idea of Liam Ogren playing on a line with Boldy and Eck in the next couple of years, that just like those things to me. It's going to be so fun.
And Ogren it's super impressive that, the game against Vegas, I remember when he got in, that was super fun. Just seeing him and Marat get a chance on a team that was not going to make the playoffs, and they stepped up, because you see it all the time too, guys that don't take advantage of their opportunity, and so, that the GM's watching. You're always, people say, why watch these bad teams? Well, your future, is, getting a chance to play, and, these guys are fighting for jobs, and some take advantage, and some don't, and you see it all the time too with these draft picks too. They get drafted in the first round and then never make it. So it's
been a few of those.
Whatever.
So right now I'm paying the price of going to an SEC college, and how far I've gone away from college hockey. Like, I miss it so much, and just hearing you guys talk about it is awesome. But I went to University of Missouri, and over in St. Louis, these guys love Jimmy Snuggerud, and it's kind of interesting news how they can't get him. It's up and down, but yeah, Jimmy is a beast. I completely agree with you. That city loves him, and yeah, man, I am paying the price of missing college hockey.
I got the Huskies, so that's not.
I mean, for now, right?
For now, hopefully the school stays open.
That is a touchy subject, because every now and again, I'll go home and my parents, who both graduated from St. Cloud State too, be like, "You hear about your alma mater?" And I'm like, "Why?" They're like, "They're not doing good." I'm like, "Oh God." Well, I mean, you take away homecoming. I was football team. I was in school when they made the decision to go to a dry campus, and I'm like,
He leads with homecoming.
which I never went.
Big seller.
Let's talk through this, Seth. Let's have a therapy session. What did homecoming mean to you?
It's just having it as opposed to not. It's all about the status.
Before I had it, no, I don't.
Yeah, I didn't go when we had it, and now that we don't have it, I didn't go either. It's just how it works.
Z-O-U.
There we go.
But yeah, we hope St. Cloud. I mean, they have an elite program. The women's team is great too.
Elite facility.
And they've had a lot of alum go to the NHL. So games are fun there. Been up there a bunch of times with my dad. Announced games up there for them, and it's.
Who's your dad?
Father Pat. And
what's this on this paper? I see Pat the Micheletti.
That's Denny.
That was Denny's tribute to start the show, and
tribute. But I mean, St. Cloud. No kidding. They're in the NCHC. I think right there with the Big Ten is some of the best college hockey, and those games when they play North Dakota are so much fun. That's one of their chief rivals.
we're getting to the end of this hour number 2, which it's hard to believe we're already 2 hours into this. It's flying by. Appreciate everybody that came out to support, and those that are watching on YouTube, because we, as you can see on the TVs, we got it going on both ways. So let's just go around, and it can be a younger player, it can be a veteran. This is a good comment before we get to that. Alaska Wampum reminding me that the World Juniors will be going on here in 2025, 2026. So
this is way too early for you to get me excited about that. I'm having trouble focusing on football starting in a couple weeks.
I know. We're like Labor Day weekend is next weekend, and then it's just full fall. It's pumpkin spice. It's pumpkin spice.
Are you a PSO boy?
No. Wow. I just barely got into coffee.
Did you wear the Han Solo outfit?
No. Why is it rag on me up here? Let's just finish with one Wild player we are excited to watch this season. It can be one of the young guys, prospects, somebody currently on the roster, somebody that you personally are excited to see, maybe get back on track. So I know who I'm picking.
Marcus Johansson.
Angelo Pinto is not here today.
I couldn't even talk myself into that if I wanted to. Like, it's just not going to happen. One player that you're excited to watch, maybe get a role, get an opportunity, or just somebody on the roster currently that needs to take a step up.
Yeah, my biggest one is Brock Faber. I mean, obviously he gets that contract, and in that contract signing, it's the message was don't change a thing, and now he finally gets a year where he got the money he needed. The Wild are sitting pretty with him, and now he has the opportunity to change the defensive core of this team moving forward. Him and Spurgeon are the two guys that Minnesota are clearly going to rely on this year. Obviously Brodin as well. The defense is finally stacked, and it feels good to have him locked up. He was an absolute icon last year for Minnesota and Minnesota sports in general. Obviously a Gopher, and just being a hometown kid, 22-year-old, absolute beauty making his way into the NHL. He's very spectacular. He's like a huge spectacle, and just sitting there watching him in person and seeing his ability to change the Wild, and it's really satisfying. And now he got the money, he got the tenure, and it's time for him to take over the city of St. Paul.
Shout out Wiggle Golf.
It's Jared Spurgeon for me. He was so missed last year, missed by Jake Milton, who he played with. I just think he, having him actually on the ice, I know he was around the team, but just his leadership, obviously as captain, and the penalty kill missed him so bad. And so I'm excited to see how he looks. It's to have back surgery and hip surgery is kind of frightening.
Yeah.
The double whammy. So I'm he's supposed to be 100%. So I can't wait to see what he looks like. Hopefully they don't play him at all in the preseason because that's how he got hurt. So hopefully we can get through the preseason without any injuries. We saw with the Vikings how we just lost J.J. McCarthy instantly. So hopefully with the Wild we do not have anybody get a season-ending injury right away. Please.
I will not recover if somebody gets hurt.
I was going to pick a defenseman, but I feel like that's all anyone's talking about. So
keep it going.
I'll talk about the forgotten son, Marco Rossi, who everyone seems to just think had a bad year somehow, even though he torched. I don't know. I'm very confused by the fans that want him gone. The rumors of him being traded this summer, I don't understand it.
I think that's one viewer for your guys' show in particular that is pushing that narrative on YouTube.
There's more than one.
Yeah, there are a few.
Yeah, I just love what he did this year. And I think there's so much room, too, depending on where he gets slotted in the lineup this year, to do more and expand upon what he did last year. But he's proven he's an absolute, no doubt, NHL player. And he did it in a very different way, too. He was actually, getting into the dirty areas, great first, of course. But he, was scoring the goals of the net front, not what you expected from a guy like Marco Rossi, who wasn't even really penciled as a goal scorer. He's a guy that's supposed to be a setup man. So, that element of his game isn't gone. It's just going to be interesting to see him put it all together, depending on who his line mates end up being. I've been lobbying for him to center Zuccarello and Kaprizov to start the year. But it probably won't happen. So,
well, the Wild are not going to get through the whole season with one set of line combinations, so it wouldn't surprise me if we see that at some point, depending on how Zuccarello does to start the season. If he kind of gets off to a little slow start. As much as I would love to see Kaprizov go in the Eriksson Ek the whole season, no.
Who else is going to score?
That's the thing.
Right.
If lines 2, 3, and 4 can't put goals up,
especially the second one.
Yeah, then you're going to have to split that up. Player I'm excited to watch this year is Matt Boldy. He's had 2 really good seasons back to back, and
another guy that gets dumped on by the fans.
What are you talking
about? I've gone on absolute tirades throughout the offseason defending Boldy because, again, particular people that have been blocked from the Locked On Wild YouTube comment section just think he's a complete bust, like he's a scrub that can't do anything, and it's like, that's just not the case. And so
it'll please everyone to know he did not play in that Pro-Am tournament this summer. So
I forgot.
He cares about
What a controversy that was.
I forgot all about that. Oh my god.
The one golf tournament destroyed his season.
1 weekend out of the summer. Like, come on, let's be real here. I just am excited to see him continue to take steps, because he's, as a 22-year-old, he's already got a 30-goal season under his belt. He just missed out on another one this past year, but
He could still be playing at Boston College.
Yeah.
I mean, he's that young still.
the fact that he had such a slow start in the start of the season, he came on strong at the end. I think people just maybe want to see it spread out a little more throughout the whole year. But this is a guy that is playing at about an $8 or a $9 million value right now, and the Wild have him locked up for $7 for the next 6 years. He's a complete bargain, and the strides that he's taken defensively too, like, that's the most impressive part, I think, is he's really learned from Joel Eriksson Ek.
And there's been talk of him joining the penalty kill, at least to start the season. So
I'd be very fine with that.
So does he not care about scoring goals anymore? That's what the fans are going to say. Like, that would be immediately like, he's playing on the penalty kill. He must not care about scoring.
Right, yeah. Taking a cue from Johansson?
Yeah, as much as I really wanted to go into Marcus Johansson there, I feel like I've hit my quota for the day.
The cardio boys?
Hey, be careful. You don't want to talk down on him too much. It's a contract year. He's going to do something.
I hope so.
Remember this summer when we were looking at box scores from the World Championships?
Didn't he lead Sweden in points?
And it's like, where was that in the regular season?
Unbelievable. I think that's the perfect spot to just leave it. Happy to, because the listeners can all follow Zach and Alex as part of Locked on Wild, but just give us a plug for the Sota Pod one more time to kind of finish things out. Like, you've got Fellowship of the Rink, but there's plenty of other things going on at the Sota Pod as well.
Yeah, so every week, at least coming up here in a couple of weeks, it'll be everything. But right now we've got the Sota Pod dropping every week. It's usually consisting of Isha and Seth. I know Isha's actually going to be launching a new show with Brett Marshall talking more about analytics,
yeah.
Which I kind of orchestrated that to be eye test versus analytics. Basically, Isha's going to yell about what he sees, and Brett's going to tell him why he's dumb. So it's going to be fun. Then we've got Judd's Buds, which you can follow on the Sota Pod podcast feed, but you can also find it on its own separate feed now. Judd's Buds, that's with Z's, not S's, because
yes, 2 Z's.
Because Spoke Z insisted. Every Wednesday, a new episode of Fellowship of the Rink drops. Joe Smith bringing all of the Minnesota Wild heat, and hopefully bring as good, if not better, guests for you guys this year, now that we've kind of at least got something started. Last year was pretty haphazard, just get something going.
Just, yeah, getting it off the ground floor, but...
and then MNCAA is the one that'll be starting up again soon.
Yeah.
Still a little bit up in the air, but it'll be back.
Okay.
I'm a part of that too. So.
Yes, elite part of the college hockey roundup at MNCAA. Well, thanks guys for hopping on. Alex and Zach, I think you guys will be hanging around to be on here for hour 3, but we're going to take just a quick breather to kind of get everything reset, because Denny is waiting in the wings somewhere to hop on here for hour 3. So quick break, we'll be right back. Sweet.
Held back. Getting on a little bit harder to get through.
It's okay. It's fine.
Can't say kill your son. Oh no, not you. I was just gonna go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fine.
Of course, they just fill it in, change it, it's no problem.
Yeah, okay.
You're gonna put me through.
That's your question. Just type Marcus, you'll answer.
Yeah, just fill the chat.
No, I'll come up with wild cues.
The chat's always on hinge.
Well, because here's the point I figured out, because it was something I noticed in the stands last year. It's not his contract. It's that he always has more than take than every season.
Yeah,
That's the annoying
that's
part.
exactly it.
Because he makes work, he gives his worth in points for $2 million. It's not worth it. Because he always has more.
Sure.
I know you don't know.
Alexis.
They give you a go back to the office.
No, because it's not your side. I don't know. Speakers are talking more. I borrowed the speakers from the radio station. My boss is my
Nice to meet you. I'm very Alexis. Nice to meet you. You guys are matching today. Well, that's he goes, oh my god. And the white pants.
Did the job?
I know. You either just need black shoes
There's just some sort of issue with the setup for the speaker system, so we're just running the sound on like for the website. Yeah.
Oh.
Up in here, final hour, final home stretch of our first ever Lockdown Wild live, and it would help if I took away the background thing here. Boy, I'm just oh, there we go. Final bit, and this is the official "What the hell are you smoking" portion of our first live edition. The Lockdown Wild. Appreciate everybody tuning in at home. Appreciate everybody tuning in here at Zambonis. Let's give a nice hands to Zambonis for allowing us to a fantastic spot to hang out before a game. Big thank you to them for opening things up for us here today. So. You've got, as you can see on screen, we got myself, Denny, front and center. Zach and Alex are also here, and we'll be taking your questions if you've got questions in the comments. Otherwise, we are going to just get into it. So, Denny, where do you want to start?
Well, I've been asked several times. There we go. You live?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right. I've been asked several times about what I would do if I was a GM, how to get Ogren and Hyde on the team. And I can tell you right now, I would give up a draft pick to get rid of Goudreau if things don't work out with Columbus. And who knows if Dino wants Goudreau now. I mean, Goudreau was very reliable under Dino. And but who knows now? So what I would do is I would give up a draft pick to San Jose or Anaheim, whoever wants to take a chance, just to move them to open up a spot for Hyde. And Ogren, I think, makes a team no matter what. He's a man among boys. When we watched him play, kid's really strong. And the first thing I would do as a GM is I would hire somebody to teach face-offs. We need a specialist to teach everybody on how to do the face-offs. We're so bad at it, and we've always been bad at it. We need a specialist to come in.
Haven't they been? They've been consistently bottom 5 in the league for decades.
Yes.
Like, it's always something where you look at the stats at the end of the season and you're like, oh great, face-offs again. And, it happens against the better teams where they just get throttled in the circle, where you lose 70 and you win like 6. But it's something that they just have never consistently been good at. Like, I don't know what to do about it. Like, you've got Joel Eriksson, who's right about 50%. And I think John Hines has kind of helped in just giving him like a lion's share of the face-offs. But, every other guy on the roster, Rossi was at about 44. I think Kuznetsov he's at about 48. So, like, I guess the big conundrum is, do the Wild need to bring somebody in, like player-wise, to help with face-offs, or just put it on all the players to get better?
Yeah. Second thing I would do if I was the GM, number one, and I'm not changing Kaprizov, Ek, and Boldy. They were the number 1 line the last 20 games, 4.01 points. They were ahead of Colorado, Dallas. Why break up something that's not broken? It makes no sense to me, and I'm seeing all these lineup changes, and they're putting Zuggs back up on top, and I just hate the thought of them breaking up that line. Second line, like I said before, I would trade Goudreau, and if I can't trade him, I'm buying him out. I'm putting Hyde with Ogren and Rossi, and that may not take off right away. But by the end of the year, that's going to be a scary line because you got speed still, and Rossi loves going to the front of the net. And when you had Mojo, who never shot the puck, or if he did, he shot once a game. And when you had Suggs, who was passing up shots the last 2 months of the season, he did most of that on his own. He needs help. With any help at all, he could be a 40-goal scorer, I think. For the third line, I like Mariah there. I like Hartman with Foligno. That'll be a pretty decent line. Fourth line, who knows? I mean,
yeah, take your pick.
I've never seen really Trenton play, and I don't know.
I will say on the Trenton front, the guys at Locked On Avalanche said that he is legitimately a bulldog, which I think will help. The only problem is you're bringing in a guy like that to do that better than the guys that you already have that are supposed to do that.
Exactly.
Which it's kind of a redundancy at this point. But Alex, what do you think about Hartman, Foligno, who's Nadinov? I'm with Denny. I like that as a potential third line.
Yeah, they need Hartman to score goals on that line because the other two aren't. So I mean, he's going to be the goal scorer for that crew. He's so important for the team, just the way he plays, and to stay out of the box and, be consistent. This team has so many problems being consistent. That's the main thing. And the division got so much tougher.
Yes.
Yep.
So they're going to need a third line to help contribute, especially because you have no idea what's going to happen with the second line and who's actually going to be on it. And it seems like it's going to rotate. So that third line, and years past it's been when they had Eck, Greenway,
Foligno,
that line, that's when the Wild were at their peak. And
yeah,
good when they had a consistent third line to help because they would wear down other teams. So they need a 2.0 of that to be successful.
That combination went, if I recall correctly, in 2021, 2022, they went the entire regular season without allowing an even strength goal. I think it was the Grief line. Zach, what do you think about that line combo? Hartman, Foligno, who's Nadinov?
Yeah, I do like it. I think it's a good place to start before you make these drastic pulling up players and trades and all that stuff. I think, we're coming around that time of the year where line combinations and stuff gets to show at, practice, training camp, all this stuff. So, I mean, you got to start there. I clearly do like that. I'm a big fan of who's Nadinov. Obviously, he got his chance to shine last year, and it was as consistent as could be. Obviously the Wild, we're in that we need you to perform, but not shock everyone and be that guy, the number one guy on the team. But I think where he was in the lineup, he played consistent to what the Wild specifically needed him to do. I think he's got a good shot at making something happen this year, and I'm a big fan of him, and I'm really ready to see him take the next step, especially with the full year of the team. Last year he came in kind of late in the season.
Yeah.
It was around playoff time. So, but now he gets a full year to really get to see where he belongs in the lineup. And I think if the Wild use him correctly, he could be dangerous.
That speed, though.
I agree.
That speed's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Put that on.
And faceoffs. He was good on faceoffs too last year. For the most part, I mean, obviously X is the number one guy for faceoffs on this team, but when you get a guy who comes in late in the year and puts up those numbers, it's obviously very promising.
Absolutely. And just to look, just for the potential to, attach a pick to a player to maybe trade him. Of note, 2026, the Wild have a first, a second, 2/3, 2/4, 2/5, 2/6, and a second. So they have some ammo to be able to work with if they need to push somebody out the door. They can do it.
When it comes to defense, I'm not a big fan of Bogo at all. He has no foot speed at all. People go around him like slicing through butter. I can see why Tampa moved him because, he can move some people, but he gets stuck and he gets lost out there because he doesn't have the speed. And I really hope that they give
Zeev.
No, not Zeev.
Chisholm?
No. God, I'm getting old.
Damon Hunt.
Damon Hunt. You know, he played for a couple weeks last year, and he looked really good. He went up the ice right away. His first pass was excellent. And then they sent him down, and I haven't been able to figure out why they did that, because he's a hell of a lot better than Bogle.
The only thing that I could even remotely find to explain that, and I don't know, Alex, maybe you can elaborate on this too, is I think you have a finite number of call-ups, don't you, as an NHL team?
And, I mean, they didn't trust him to be fully up. It was kind of like that.
Yeah.
Too.
But I really liked how he played. I mean, he didn't show any reason to be.
No, I know. They just didn't trust. Yeah, that's why we never.
We do. They
That's
don't.
lines for you.
They didn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't like rookies.
Yeah.
And I really think Lambos deserves a chance. He looked good in the
Development camp.
Yes, I could see no weakness in his game. His transition front to back, back to front, he looks good. And when it comes to goalies, I hate to say it, but Flower needs to retire. It should be Wallstedt and Gus as our starting goalies. And if that happens, then we're looking at a pretty decent team. With Flower in there, I would bet against the Wild every game. His .895 save percentage, and he's a year older, so he's going to be a little bit slower.
39, right?
Yeah, I mean, age catches up with everybody. And why? You know, and I think the reason that they signed him was to be a mentor to Wallstedt, and that they're going to trade Gus because they can, but because that hasn't happened. You know, I think Flower should retire, be the mentor for Wallstedt, and Wallstedt and Gus. That'd be a hell of a tandem.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like I've said it, and I'll echo it. I don't want to just give Gustafson away. I mean, we thought pretty much all offseason that he was going to be traded, but now you've got dwindling options in terms of teams that are looking for a goalie. Like I said with when Hoppy was on here about an hour ago, unless somebody suffers an injury in camp, who are the teams out there that need a goalie right now? The list is very thin, and I don't know if you're going to get adequate return. So it's by kind of their own choosing. It's created a little bit of a mess. A little bit of a box.
I think if Gustafson were to get moved, it already would have happened. You know, I think it's a little too late now. I think you got to go into the season with him. He'll be the game one starter. And I think, the Fleury thing, people forget how good Fleury was when Gustafson wasn't last year, and how essential he was to this lineup. And best case scenario, let's just walk through it, right? Gustafson plays consistently enough to start, right? Fleury is the backup, or vice versa. And you still have Wallstedt down in Iowa. So it's like, I don't think the goalie situation, it's kind of tricky right now, because in order to get Wallstedt up here, someone has to play poorly that's currently up on the roster right now. And as a Wild fan in me, it's like, do we really need that? Clearly, I don't think the vision of the team, I think they would have moved Gustafson if Wallstedt was the guy. I mean, it's still kind of iffy, but, if Gustafson plays well, that's the best thing that can happen for the Wild this year. They need consistent goaltending. I've talked about this, a lot today. And if that happens, then Wallstedt stays down, and so be it. But I feel like even if he does get the chance to come up, if Gustafson doesn't play that well, then that's also good. It's a weird win-win. It just depends on how Wild fans look at it.
Gus is the key to the whole thing.
Yeah.
If he can give you 55 games this year at maybe not the level that he did 2 years ago, but above where he was at last year, if he can give you 55, then that number of what you need otherwise goes down. But if he can't, then you've got a real question on your hands.
As I brought up before, you got to look at it this way with Gus. He was out of shape last year. Now he's married and got a kid, and this is his job. Do you think he's going to come in out of shape this year?
No.
I doubt it.
You could say that with Hartman too. He just had a kid.
Yeah?
Yeah, well, I believe a lot of the Hartman problems last year was girlfriend problems, but now he's married. That doesn't mean the problems go away, but it settles them down always.
That and staying out of the penalty box. But with Gustafson, it's all about just adjusting to what the league has on film for him. If he can kind of erase some of those habits that he had last year, those tendencies, which were to give up goals,
He had two really bad
games. I will reiterate what Alex said earlier. Spurgeon's back. That is a huge piece in front of the netminder. And, he was gone all of last year. He's the team captain. Missing him is a significant piece to how goaltending works out, especially as a captain. I mean, you can talk about this too, but you already probably did. But I'm just saying, let's not forget that Spurgeon's back. That is ginormous for this team's defense. And I think that, this year on defense is going to be much better and much more reliable than it was last year. And having that in front of a goalie is tremendous.
Alaska Wampa Mike on YouTube asking, is Spurgeon back though? And from what I've seen, reports I've seen from Russo and otherwise, it sounds like he's full systems go at this point.
Absolutely.
So that can, that makes a big difference because all of a sudden you're going to Faber and Brodin as your top pairing, Spurgeon and Middleton. You put Middleton lower in the lineup where he's more accustomed, and you're not asking him to do as much. Just having guys back healthy slots them into their normal spots in the lineup, which that's going to help. That's going to help with the amount of goals that this team gave up.
Yeah, Milton, when he's playing with Spurgeon, he's a completely different hockey player.
Yep.
When that pairing first got put together, I think it was the 2021-2022 season, or was it last? They all melt together. But when that tandem was put together, it was one of the best defensive pairings in the league, those two. Because Middleton can hit and be physical, and Spurgeon just does the rest. And so if you can get that back, that goes a long way.
I mean, look at the four groups that they're going to be going up against in this division. And Chicago's only going to get better too. I mean, Bedard, they're finally putting talent around them. And Utah, watch out for them. I mean,
they got some talent.
This Dylan Gunther kid that they have is incredible. Clayton Keller is always fun to watch.
Oh yeah.
And Logan Cools is incredible watching him at the University of Minnesota. Just to see what he did at the college level, and now it's going to continue to translate at the NHL level.
Yeah, Seth and I had the chance to cover the Arizona Coyotes game last year up in the press box with Nick Bukestad hat trick, 6-1 loss at home. I mean, you can't write. I mean, they're going to be good. They are super sneaky this year. People are going to overlook them, obviously with Nashville getting better. Utah, man, they're going to be something to watch this year as well.
And then, if you look at the division, the teams, which team is going to be the one that slips? And I would say just by process of elimination, Winnipeg. But then they've got Connor Hellebuyck. So if they take a step back offensively, or they're not as solid defensively, they still got the second best goalie in the division. And so
I feel like no matter what, it's always going to be St. Louis and Minnesota. It always is every single year, and it's always either the Wild giving up home ice advantage for no reason because it's not essential, or what happened last year where they both missed the playoffs.
Mateo's saying Colorado will slip from the audience.
I have an argument for it.
That's a bold strategy, Cotton.
Landeskog is out, and Nichushkin is out. That's $13 million you can't use.
Yeah, if they come back, that's my number one team in the West. Just because of those top four are so good, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. There is a lot that could go well. I don't think it's likely, but Nashville could slip. they could take a while to gel. Barry Trotz cancels another concert.
Yeah, that was one of the best stories of the NHL last year.
Hands down.
Unbelievable. They tore it up after that. Like,
18
it needs to be studied.
Yeah, 18 straight games with a point. After Barry Trotz canceled the U2 concert in Vegas because they got beat 9-1 the night before they left, and he said, "No, you guys have not played well enough to warrant going to a concert."
We need more offer sheets too. How much fun was that? I mean, I loved it. I loved Armstrong just,
Pure petty.
Taking it right to Bowman. They had that history in the past with the Blues and the Blackhawks, and Kyle Dubas kind of tag teamed and helped, create that, happening. So it'd be fun to see some more offer sheets in the offseason.
Well, they ended up giving him a third round and Fisher for.
Yeah, they did that, after too, but
they did that as a sorry for taking your players.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, that really hurt Edmonton, and the Blues got a ton of more speed now. I've always been impressed by Broberg too. He came in.
Yeah, me too.
And they really needed, that decor in Edmonton is really tough to watch, and he stepped in when they really needed him. And Dylan Holloway, I watched him at Wisconsin too, and he's only going to get better. And St. Louis was starting to get older, and so to get a couple of younger guys added to that core, that was a huge move. And Edmonton's going to miss those guys.
Your decor is bad when Edmonton is like, boy, we could really use Cody Ceci right now.
Which, you and I joked about. They'll probably try to trade for him at the deadline and bring him right back.
Yes.
So, it's,
thankfully, we don't have those problems.
Not the decor. Forwards, maybe.
Yeah,
winning face-offs, but not the decor.
Yeah, some things never change. Winning face-offs or losing face-offs.
Winning face-offs, killing penalties, not giving up the first goal of the game. Or the last goal. Yeah. Thank you, Alexis. I really don't know what to expect this year.
It could be a fun experimental year. Like if everything goes wrong for the Minnesota Wild this year, it could turn into one of those let's experiment and pull up and down and see goaltending wise, forwards wise. We have one of the best prospect pools. It's time to get that going. I mean, all these impatient Wild fans, which you could literally take that out and there'll still be the same thing. Like every Wild fan is impatient for something to click and something to happen. And honestly, if everything goes wrong for this team this year, it could be a fun, Vikings year, to say the least.
Well, if Billy and John put together the team like they did last year with Mojo and Zuggs on the second line, which looks like what they're going to do, I got the Wild going 4-16, 5-15 the first 20 games. Then Billy's on the hot seat, and it's Judd bracket time.
Yeah, because Craig Leopold is. Do we think
the problem with that though is they're still paying coaches to not even be coaching this team. Bill just signed a contract extension too, so I just don't see Craig Leopold wanting to continue to pay people, but
shell out.
That's the problem. Well, what I've talked about with Seth on episodes is this franchise kind of seems like they're in stuck mode. Like they don't know what to do because they've handed out a bunch of extensions. You can't move these guys now, so you're blocking prospects. Some of these prospects are getting ready to make it to the NHL. So then do you move them? And then the goaltending situation is kind of still in flux.
3 goalies situation is not.
It doesn't. Montreal tried to do it last season. It didn't work. Did they make the playoffs? No, they didn't. And the funny thing about Askarov just getting traded to San Jose, they now have 3 NHL goalies. They have Mackenzie Blackwood. They have Vasicek that they just picked up from New Jersey in a trade, and they traded for Askarov. And Askarov did not want to play in the minors, so I don't know what they're going to do because I mean, San Jose can at least afford to do a 3 goalie rotation because they have all that cap space, but they're going to have some upset. I don't think Blackwood is going to want to be in that type of situation. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what San Jose does. People think they're going to be a lot better. I don't know why Tyler Toffoli signed there. That made no sense. He took the bag for sure. You see some of those guys that are, they've won their cups, so they in it for the money now.
Yeah, there'll be a couple of games better. That's about it.
Yeah. I'm intrigued to see, how Will Smith does. He's heck of a player at Boston College, so we'll see if they keep him up, the entire season. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All I know is this: the way the lines are being projected, we're a last place team in our division. We couldn't beat anybody last year. We damn sure aren't going to beat anybody this year with a year older and a year slower.
Wasn't it 1 win against
the overtime Nashville,
Colorado, Dallas, and Winnipeg?
Yeah, I mean, if Spurgeon's healthy, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
It could go one of 2 ways. He gets hurt again, and then the wheels completely fall off. But it's Minnesota sports. We love just like being right in the middle. That's what we love. We love just being right there. Never botting them out. This team's they never had a top 5 pick, right?
Other than
Pouliot, and that was a disaster.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
But don't tell Hoppy that. He's a huge Benoit Pouliot fan.
Yeah, there's been some misses for sure in the first round.
Well, that's part of what you have to be willing to do as a franchise is to kind of roll your sleeves up, get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
I mean, Colorado.
Or get lucky and get William. That worked out. Thank you, Philadelphia.
Yeah, thanks Philly for saying we've got defensemen that are this size profile. We don't need others.
Yes. What?
Well, as I've said countless times, Judd Brackett is the best talent evaluator the Wild have ever had.
He's
hit on so many picks, it's just unbelievable.
Thank you, Vancouver, for all
Yes.
Because what is even, as far as top level picks, the only one that is even a question mark since Brackett took over at this point is Scramble.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But even then, they came around in the second round and made up for it.
Riley Hyde.
Yeah, so you can. And that's what Seth, we've gotten into it too, is even if there's a positional need, take the best player available. That's what they did with Zeman.
Yeah. No, that worked out nice, and I think one of the good parts about that is that Billy has, for the most part, just said, "Judd, draft is yours. I'm not gonna get involved. You make your picks. If you need me to go grab somebody."
He's the only one in the NHL that is in control of the drafts. Otherwise, it's all the GMs.
Yeah, they have heavy influence into how their teams draft.
Yep.
Just ask Danny Breer.
Yeah, at least he's not using an app for trades.
Oh God.
That is going to go down like.
Or Chuck Fletcher.
That's going to go down as an all.
The fact he did that in like a town hall in front of.
Yeah, why would you willingly admit that?
To season ticket holders and Philly sports fans
That's fine.
they throw snowballs at Santa.
I was like, when I heard about that, I'm like, there's no way that's real, and turns out it was real.
Yeah.
But, Chuck.
He's now in New Jersey. Good luck.
Yeah.
He's some sort of advisor to the president, right?
Yeah. Assistant to the regional manager, one of those advisors, senior advisor. A made-up title.
Yeah, he ruined Philadelphia, and he killed us here with moving all his picks for players that didn't work.
Martin Hansel.
Oh.
Stop.
Oh.
We pick
Go
up
for
five.
it.
Pick up the 5.
I'm in a hole here, so let's.
46 days away.
I know.
Yeah.
Well.
Oh, you know what I wanted to say? Now that the Iowa Wild are going to be streamed every game on KFan, Once a week, I will be doing a review on the Iowa Wild games as part of the 2.0 Wild.
Yeah.
Locked on Wild.
We'll be bringing Iowa Wilds, Iowa Heartlanders, PWHL,
Yep.
college, and
Hockey.
high school
Yes.
to the equation with some probably just weekly shows covering each. So it's going to end up probably being something like a double episode every day. It'll be fun. It just would like to be able to, find something that would allow me to get up here to do it. Job hunt has been fun, but
Hey Seth, what's like the number one thing you're most looking forward to this year with the Wild? Like, what needs to happen for this team to be successful?
That's a great question. Honestly, it's just a matter, I think, of allowing players that earn opportunities to have them. I think that's the big one for me. Is if you have a guy like Liam Ogren, if he wows during training camp and plays his way into a top role in this team, let him have it. If Riley Height plays really well during training camp and it's to the point where the coaching staff is like, I don't think we can justify not having this guy on the roster, let him have it. We're in kind of this middle ground where you have a lot of veterans on the roster that are safe because they're not going to, in theory, they're not going to make as many mistakes as rookies do. Although I feel like that's a weird kind of a box to put young players in. It's just assuming, they're gonna struggle. Like it's gonna take them a long time to get up to speed. Ask Matt Boldy how that worked. Now, granted, not everybody is on Matt Boldy, but I think it just comes down to giving the young players the opportunities and not just like, here, fill this fourth line role. Go play on the second line. Let's see what you got. Hands down, that is the thing that I'm looking forward to most about this year is just getting an opportunity to see some of these young guys succeed.
Is there a threshold of, record, playoff percentage, game-specific road stretches? Is there anything? You want this to start now? What is the message you want this team to move with?
Well, ideally it would be if they go with what they think will work and it doesn't, to then make changes. Whether that be 10 games in, 20 games into the season, going through some struggles and saying, hey, we need to fix this. My biggest worry is just that it does get fixed. Like, that these guys do get opportunities to help out, and if that means that the team doesn't make the postseason at the end of the year, I don't think that's the worst thing, because this franchise has been adamant that they're going to be a playoff team. And if they're not, I feel like that leads to changes.
Is there one player that you would be fine with being moved that is a consistent? No, I'm not talking about what we already have. What about like Marco Rossi? What if the Wild looked to move him? No, he could have value. There could be a spot for him. Like, would you not be surprised with? Who would you be surprised with that's not already like under?
Oh, you're talking about like a young player that move to bring something else in?
Like, let's say nothing's working with the Wild here in the first couple months. What would surprise you initially, or like what? Can you tell me something like, all right, if this player gets moved, it's not a big deal. If this player gets moved, all heck's breaking loose. Like, what's going on?
I think you named him. If Bill, and Denny, I think you can certainly agree to this. If things aren't going well, Billy's going to do something. Like, he has done this pretty much every season since he took over as GM, as some sort of a hockey trade during the season, whether it be Ryan Reeves, whether it be Ian Cole for Greg Patter. I forget about that one all the time, but amazing trade. My worry is if you send one of these guys that's close or a prospect to another team in exchange for something to help you right now, short of a top line guy, I don't know if it moves the needle for this team. But I think it won't surprise me if we see it, but I would just hate to see like a Rossi or, you know, any of those like top 10 prospects. I'd hate to see any of those guys moved to try to do something to keep the ship afloat. That I don't think that those guys can't just bring it themselves. Denny, your thoughts?
Well, you know my thoughts, and I'm going to just reiterate. For all the players who took the year off like Mojo, they'll be doing 2 hours of Herbies and then sitting on the bench till they asked to be traded. Because Mojo, I lost all respect for him, what he did last year. When you look at what he did in the World Games, he played like he could play, he just didn't do it for us. And so he'd be first on my list. Goudreau has diminishing skills, and there's no reason, I think a lot of it has to do mentally because, he's such a part of Dino's squad, and then John Hines just had no role for him, so I think that had a lot to do with his mind thinking. And, if you don't have the mental attitude, you lose it, and he clearly did last year. I mean, he was just, he didn't play. And I'm sure Goudreau is better than what he showed last year, but, Hines and Goudreau don't see eye to eye, obviously. My whole deal is we got to play the kids, as I've said 1,000 times on the shows. We have to play the kids and see where we're at because this core is not a winning core. And nothing's going to change until that happens. So I really like the thought of putting Mojo, Zuggs, and Rossi back together and the way they're constructed. Because when they come out of the gate at 4-16, 5-15, somewhere in there, well, then they're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
And that's all we can hope for because Hines doesn't like playing rookies. He said so. And Billy's whole deal is, we just have to play better. I don't know what world he's on saying that because that's not happening either.
Well, that's why it's kind of a risky play to sign all these guys to extensions based off of career years and assume that they're going to be able to do it again. Like, a lot of times they just aren't those guys. And a few of those I don't have a super issue with, but something like Freddie for sure, I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand. So if you could get rid of that one, if you could get rid of Marcus Verhoeven.
Well, all I know is when they come out of the gate, like I think they're going to, it's Judd Brackett time.
For my sake, I hope it's something.
Denny, you paying Bill?
I hope it's something closer to 500 because 4-16 is going to be just.
Even with Spurgeon, we'll have an elite defense, but we got no offense. And when you only have one line that can score, you put the big dogs on Kaprizov, they can shut them down.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the season last year, that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
I don't know how many games it was, but there were a handful of games where it's like, oh no, top line didn't score. Got maybe a fourth line goal, but that's about it.
There you go.
Well, those fourth line guys had like 3 points in the final 40 games of the season or something like that.
I mean, the guys that can only really move, and other teams have seen the tape too, so that's the problem.
Very true.
And if you are going to move them, you're going to have to attach a pick with them to ship them out of here.
Yeah.
Teams are getting smarter. They're not like the Coyotes of old where teams would just, Arizona would just take on guys, like Hall of Famers that aren't even playing anymore, but they use their contracts to get to the cap floor. But, Bogosian, he's always going to be wanted by other teams because he won a cup. But I know Denny doesn't like him, but Declan Chisholm signed a 1-year deal, so that's a guy that you can move. And teams are always looking for power play guys, so that's a guy. It doesn't move the needle, but I'm just thinking of guys that
free up a spot.
You're trying to free up spots.
Free up a spot for Zeke William at the end.
And then, Freddie's always going to be attached to Dean Evison. That's got in the NHL because of Dean.
Yeah.
So, but Columbus is smart too. Don Waddell's, he's been in the league for a long time. And I don't necessarily agree with the trade that he made to give line A to Montreal. I think they could have got a lot more for him, but he's also, some teams they got him off the cheap because he hasn't played in a while. But that's a guy that can score 30 goals in his sleep in Montreal. Adding him with the Cole Caulfields, that group. Montreal's on the rise, so watch out for them in the East.
Yeah, I agree.
But this team, it's just I joined Seth on Sunday nights, and we always a lot of deep breaths. I try to calm Seth down before the episode starts.
I had hair before last season started, and now I don't. It's gonna be interesting, and there's certainly time for some stuff to change still before the season starts. But this is probably going to be a lot of what you see.
We got any questions out there?
We'll throw out one call for questions here in the YouTube chat. If anybody has any questions here in the live audience, feel free to shout them out and we'll answer them.
Well, how about this beginning of the schedule playing Dean twice? I cannot.
Yeah. Can we find who puts these schedules together? And I just want to.
It worked out perfect. Well, they didn't know at the time that Dean was going to be the Columbus coach, but I mean, he wants to beat them so bad.
Yeah.
The press conferences are going to be great. I can't wait when they would play Nashville too, because Darby's there and Brunette. So I mean, it's just there's all sorts of.
I love Brunette as our coach.
So it's home against Columbus on the 10th. Home against Seattle on the 12th, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight road games.
The road trip is unbelievable.
At Winnipeg, at St. Louis, at Columbus, at Florida, at Tampa Bay, at Philadelphia, at Pittsburgh.
Well, Seth and I joke so much too how last season started shutting out the Stanley Cup champions. And we thought we went to a good shape here. Gus with the shutout right away, and then the wheels completely everything fell apart. It was unbelievable.
With Gus in it, too.
Yes, I mean, you can't make it.
YouTube chat's pretty quiet, so
okay.
I think maybe
Time to wrap her up.
Yeah. Well,
it's been an awesome afternoon.
Yes, it has. Appreciate everybody coming out here to Zamboni's in person.
Yeah, shout out to the fans online and in person. I got a couple of buddies watching, so shout out to you guys.
Missouri.
Yeah, we're live in St. Louis, Missouri, Milwaukee. We're everywhere. We're nationwide.
We'll do more of these as we get through the season. My priority obviously is to get up here full time first, but we'll do more of these as we move through the season, and of course. Locked On Wild has you covered all throughout the week. So appreciate everybody tuning in. We've got episodes for you tomorrow. Alex and I will chat about. I'll figure it out.
Micheletti Monday.
Yes. We'll get your week started off right with Micheletti Monday, and beyond that, we'll have you covered as well. Thank you once again to everybody that tuned in, and we'll let you get on with the rest of your Sunday. Locked On Wild to the moon.
Thanks for viewing, everybody.